It's the regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Cottonwood held on May 17th at 6 p.m. at the Council Chambers Building. City Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Dowling.
Here.
Councilmember Alinsky.
Here.
Councilmember Garrison.
Present.
Councilmember Howdy.
Here.
Councilmember Pratt.
Here.
Vice Mayor Piper. Here. Mayor Jones.
Here. Okay, the next item is a brief summary of current events by the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, just trying to find my mouse. So we didn't get anybody for the pledge tonight?
We do have somebody from
We do.
W.
Okay. So, it's like,
Do we get to fight it out or no?
Okay. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
you want to share a little bit about the Cottonwood Youth Advisory Council?
Sure, I'm Kaylee Gordon. I'm the Vice President of the Cottonwood Youth Advisory Commission, and I'm going to be leaving to college soon, but so my time on the council's almost over, but we've been having a great time working on just helping out and doing community service. It's been great.
Well, Kylie, we really appreciate all you've done. What, 3 years have you been
Yeah,
on?
3
3
years.
years now. You've done a lot of work and really advocated for youth and been involved in a lot of activities.
Thank you.
So, going to college,
I'm going to ASU in the fall
okay,
for broadcast journalism.
okay, great. Any scholarships yet?
I am a part of the Next Generation Service Corps. And so there's a big scholarship there, and I get to work with people in the community and city officials too.
Well, great. A lot of times people on the Cottonwood Youth Advisory Commission do get some pretty nice scholarships
Yeah.
just from all their activities and everything they've done in the community. So, well, we wish you the very best.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. And the next item is a brief summary of current events by the mayor, city council, and city manager. The public body does not propose, discuss, deliberate, or take legal action on any matter brought up during this summary unless the specific matter is properly noticed for legal action. Mr. Bartosh?
Council, or Madam Mayor, council members, just want to report that Operation Graduation is this Friday night, and again, we're hosting it at the Rec Center. And our police department also donated $1,000 in RICO money for the event as well. And for those of you who don't know what RICO dollars are, that's essentially revenues that police department has collected from drug dealers predominantly. The Youth Commission had their final event of the year. It was a teen night event, and around 40 kids showed up. Just a reminder to everybody that we're doing sealing a bunch of streets this week, and that'll continue for a couple weeks, and also all the city parking lots will be sealed as well. The police department has started their neighborhood officer program, and it's going live this week. And if you go to the police department website under community, the link will take you to the name of the officer for your particular neighborhood area. City's been divided into 8 areas, and the officers are trying to get out and introduce themselves as much as possible. So this should be a great program for our community. So that's it, Madam Mayor.
Okay, council members. Mr. Pratt?
Yeah, I can't help myself, and this is my last chance before the summer semester begins.
All right, go for
I
it.
do remind the public that registration is open for summer classes, which begin June 6th, and registration continues to be open for fall semester, and we invite you all up there. We're trying to build our enrollments, and we also have a great program for kids on campus. We have College for Kids, and as well, we have the Missoula Children's Theater. So check us out at Yavapai College and come on up and take a class.
Fantastic. Anyone else? Vice Mayor, you probably can talk a little bit about the primetime fair.
We had at least 200 or more at the Primetime Fair. We had it at the fairgrounds Saturday from 9 to 1. We had a lot of great door prizes. Most of it was flowers. Home Depot donated over 20 different potted plants for the door prizes, but we had a good response, good reaction, good weather. The only problem was there was one step up, so we put Paul Green, we sat Paul Green right there, and he told everybody, watch your step as they came in.
Okay, perfect
So,
job,
He's,
Paul.
oh, he was great
Yeah,
at
I
it.
bet he is.
And so, we had no mishaps, but it
Wonderful.
was great.
Wonderful. Okay,
Mayor,
yes, Mr. Elinsky?
it's my last meeting, so I thought I
Wow.
would, I'm going to resign at the end of the month, so I thought I'd just bid farewell to everyone. It's been a pleasure serving for 10 years, and I'll miss you all, but I may be back.
Yeah.
I'm resigning to run for mayor, as everyone may or may not know, so legally I'm required to resign. This will be my last regular council meeting, so anyway, it's been a pleasure serving.
Well, we appreciate the 10 years that you've given. You've been very dedicated
Thank you.
and attended a lot of meetings, done a lot of studying.
Yeah, sort of planned my life around these meetings, in fact, you know.
Even
joke,
when,
yeah,
even when you
yeah.
work out of town, right? You
Yep,
make
yep.
a point to come back for
Yeah,
meetings.
plan my work schedule, planned my wedding, my honeymoon.
That's right. I think
Yeah.
on your wedding day, you went on a bike ride with us, didn't you, that morning?
that morning, and then flew to Ireland that afternoon.
Was that the mayor's bike ride?
Yeah, that's right, yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
well, not, I guess I'll jump in there too, not to try and one-up Mr. Alinsky, but this will be my last meeting as well. I'm having to relocate to just outside the Cottonwood city limits, so I will no longer really be eligible to be on the council. So, again, it's been my pleasure to serve, and if there was some crazy loophole or way to work around it, I would do that, but the last thing the city needs is any more drama or upheaval. So, but I still work here every day, and if you want to ask me any questions, I'll still be available to do whatever I can to help out at the city level or personally or indirectly or directly, but I appreciate all you having us around, and I will be thinking of it a lot when I'm not here. I'll probably end up coming here anyway. My wife will probably be tired of me coming home on Tuesday. But again, thanks to everybody in the audience and the television audience for the chance to serve. It's been a great opportunity for me, and if I get the chance to do it again, I will definitely be back.
Jesse's done a great job. He's always been level-headed and kind and cooperative with other council members, supports the community, and has done really an awesome job also. So we really appreciate. Sorry to lose you guys.
Wasn't my first choice.
I know. Sometimes life happens, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And Mr. Garrison?
I will pile on, along with Kaylee and Jesse and Tim. I will be resigning this month as well. I will be part of the exodus of current council members, and it's been a very rewarding experience. It's been a very fun experience. It's been a daunting task, but if any of you have the will or the want or the need for self-humiliation, this is a great way to gain that and be a part of your community, part of making your community better and stronger. And if you have any inkling of wanting to do this, I wholeheartedly wish you the best, and you should pursue that interest. And I will be hopefully moving on to another arena of public service, so we'll see what the future brings. But I appreciate the opportunity to serve, and thank you all for attending tonight.
And thank you for your service. It's appreciated. Okay, so I also attended the mayor's bike ride last Saturday. And after 9 years, basically I do this to be a good sport. I don't really love to ride bikes anymore. But I do it, and I use a bike that I got when I was 11 years old. It's a Western Flyer. It's old. And it still goes. The nice bike I had that was an 18-speed wore out, but this bike is just steady Eddie. So I did announce that it would be my last mayor's ride, but they thought that I might be able to ride in another office, so we'll see. And maybe it's not my last ride. I just wanted to let council know that Charlene Kirby passed away. Maybe you read that in the paper. That Dwayne Kirby was on our council for many, well, 4 years, I guess. He had a 4-year term. So I got a Facebook message from Greg about 2 hours before the funeral and with the announcement on it. So I looked on my calendar and there was actually a blank spot there. So I was able to go and really feel like I was representing the council because he did a lot of great work for us. I did the Pledge of Allegiance at the Relay for Life, and it looked a little bit sparse when I first got there, but it really, by the time the pledge was said, there were a lot of people there. So supporting people who have passed away from cancer, have cancer, caregivers, and all of that. On Saturday, I just decided that I needed some nature. And so I accepted, even though there were lots of other things going on that day, I accepted an invitation to attend an event at the Red Rock State Park, and this was the grand opening of their butterfly garden and their hummingbird garden. And if you get a chance to go see that, it's very nice. And they explained, something I learned is that monarch butterflies only eat milkweed. That's their only diet that they have. And I said, I remembered on the farm, we used to like hoe those out of the bean fields because they were really awful weeds, you know. But now, and I told my farmer husband that, and he says, oh, that's why we had so many butterflies on the farm, because milkweed were pretty prevalent there. So that was a great learning experience. I went to the Mental Health Coalition's movie called, I can't read my writing. Anyway, it was a movie about a soldier, a person who had been in the service, and he came home and he had PSTD really badly. And it was a great movie, Reparition, I think it was called. And then I gave a talk afterwards about PTSD and when Paul came home from Vietnam. And that was really hard because that was a while back to, draw that out of myself because it's not talked about in our family too often. But hopefully if it helps someone else, then it was all worth it. I also attended Joan Burke's. If everybody knows Joan, she does all of the murals all over town and works with the kids. She has an art show down at a new business called the Dragonfly. It's a new art center, art gallery, and if you want to stop down there and see her, she has a lot of flowers, they're very beautiful, so I was glad to be able to attend that. And that's about all I've done lately. Okay, if there's nothing else from council members, we'll move on to introduction of new employees.
Madam Mayor, council members, I'd like to introduce Stephen HANNA. He's our newest communications specialist.
Hi.
A little bit about Stephen. He's moved to Jerome in July of 2015. He's from upstate New York. And anytime I talk to anybody from New York, they always say, I'm from upstate. So I'm not exactly sure. But, his background in computers and small business consulting. His wife, Monique, owns the jewelry store up in Jerome called Orem Jewelry. He's got a stepdaughter heading to ASU in the fall, and 2 sons, Ben and Colin, 16 years old and 13 years old. 2 dogs. I've never heard of the breed Schnoodle, but he does have a Schnoodle.
A Schnauzer poodle, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And a Borador, which I'd never heard of either. But I guess border collie and a black lab makes a Borador. Hobbies are cooking and computers. Really enjoys the people here and the view, I'm sure, from Jerome. And we're very glad to have him, especially with his vast knowledge of computers. I think he'll be a real asset to us and doing a great job so far.
Great, thank you. Any Any comments or suggestions? This is the suggestion box up
I
here.
don't know about suggestions. No, I'm really excited about getting started. I've started on April 18th in the communications department, and really excited. I'm going through training. I'm heading there now, and just really looking forward to getting started in this role. So
We're starting on the fun graveyard
the
shift.
graveyard shift.
Okay. Great, well, thank you very much, and we
Thank you.
wish you a lot of good things, good times in serving the citizens of Cottonwood and the Verde Valley.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, the next item is proclamations, and we have quite a few today. Proclaiming May 21st, 2016 as Kids to Parks Day. Is there anyone here to accept this, Ms. Jimenez, tonight?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Anybody here to accept the kids' proclamation for state or national parks? Okay. Whereas May 21st, 2016 is the 6th Kids to Park Day organized and launched by the National Park Trust. Whereas Kids to Park Day empowers kids and encourages families to get outdoors and visit America's parks. And whereas it is important to introduce a new generation to our nation's parks because of the decline in park attendance over the last decades, and whereas we should encourage children to lead a more active lifestyle to combat the issues of childhood obesity, diabetes, hypertension, and hypercholesterolemia, no, high cholesterol. And whereas Kids to Parks Day will broaden children's appreciation for nature and the outdoors. Now therefore, I, Diane Jones, Mayor, hereby proclaim to participate in Kids to Parks Day and urge residents of the city of Cottonwood to make time May 21st, 2016 to take children to their in their lives to a neighborhood, state, or national park. In witness thereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused to be affixed the seal of Cottonwood, Arizona on this 3rd day of May, 2016. Even though it's not the 3rd day of May. Okay, the next item is proclaiming May as Bicycle Awareness Month and May 16th through 20th, 2016 as Bike to Work Week. And Hezekiah's here. Will you be accepting this? Yes. Okay. Whereas for more than a century, the bicycle has been an important part of the lives of most Americans, and whereas today Americans are turning to the bicycle more than ever before as a means of becoming a part of the solution in our nation's quest to better our citizens' health, improve our environmental quality, and promote our energy independence, and do overwhelmingly support improving our quality of life and providing quality recreational opportunities for our families and our visitors. And whereas the League of American Bicyclists and its chapters have declared May as Bike Month since 1956. And whereas the City of Cottonwood Bicycle Advisory Committee, our Valley's chapter of the League, and independent cyclists throughout Arizona are calling for greater public awareness of bicycle operation and safety in an effort to reduce accidents, injuries, and fatalities, and to increase enjoyment for all. Now therefore, I, Diane Jones, Mayor of the City of Cottonwood, do hereby proclaim May 2016 as Bicycle Awareness Month and the week of May 16th through 20th to be the Bike to Work Week throughout all of Cottonwood, and urge all residents, schools, city departments, and civic groups to support bicycling, and for motorists, pedestrians, and bicyclists to work together to share our streets, roads, and trails. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused to be affixed the seal of the City of Cottonwood, Arizona, the 17th day of May, 2016. And I'd like to thank our city manager we talked about bicycles for a long time after I became the mayor, and Randy Victory was really an advocate for bicycles in those days, and we had a group of people that wanted an official council-approved group or committee to be created. And as the discussion went, you created a group of citizens that wanted to participate. And you have given staff time to that. And I think that we can see the success of the program in the city with the sharrows and the bike lanes and all of things. And I'd like to thank the city council that has been very supportive and passed. Whenever we've built streets, you've all ensured that we added bike lanes as well as sidewalks. That's been very, very important to this council. So I think that we can declare that we've been very successful in our efforts as a bicycle-friendly community. Each council person here has been part of that. And I would just like to invite Hez up before he accepts the proclamation, and if you want to share a little bit about the bronze and the application for the silver from the American Bicycle League.
Madam Mayor, Council, I want to thank Dr. Bob and the audience.
Our
He's been a
committee members,
backbone.
thank you, Dr. Bob. You're like hiding behind there. He's been a huge part of this with a lot of great ideas. Thank
He's a
you,
little
Dr.
shy.
Bob.
I tried to drag him up, but he wouldn't come.
Shy? Okay.
Yeah. The Bicycle Advisory Committee is a small but dedicated group of localist cyclists in the area from many different disciplines, whether it be road biking or mountain biking. They all have a common core interest, and that's for exercise, staying active. And then there's also economic portion with this as well by bringing other cyclists to the area because we have such a prolific scenic area to ride in. So that's why the MS Bike Ride came to this area. So we're just doing our best to proliferate that effort and keep it moving forward. So.
Great. So Dr. Bob, why don't you come on up and accept this also? Is there anyone else from the Bicycle Committee here tonight? Council members, you want to come up and give the proclamation?
I might just mention, Mayor Jones, that tomorrow's the Ride of Silence, 5 o'clock at Riverfront Park. And it's a ride to honor those bicyclists who have been killed and pay them homage. And I know that several people on the council have bicycles, and several city managers on the council also have bicycles.
Good point.
And we would encourage you to come out tomorrow at 5 o'clock at Riverfront Park. It's a short ceremony, short ride, and to honor those that have been injured or killed on bicycles.
Thank you. It's a very somber time. And Commander Eisengood, do you want to share a little bit about the police part of it? Enforcement is a big part of being a successful bicycle community.
It is, yeah, and we've made some changes to our records management in where we make contact with individuals on bicycles, which we hadn't had in the past, so that's been a big help as well for some of the statistics needed for the silver award that we're working toward.
We're working hard on that. So, Mr. Bartosh?
Yes.
If it weren't for you, we wouldn't be where we are either. Would you please come up and help us present this, help the council present this proclamation and honor our bicycle community. So just keep this centered here. Okay, so thank you very much. Thanks, Dr. Butler. Commander, thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
not to kind of bum everybody out, but we did recently find out that we didn't get silver.
Okay, I hadn't heard that yet.
We're close.
Right, we just have
And,
one or two more things we need to do? Or?
Yeah, they came out and inspected the city and gave us some real good ideas on what we need to do. And
Okay,
we're going to put that in a presentation. We'll bring that to council during a work session. And
perfect.
it'll be important information for us to kind of aim for in the future years.
Great. And I'd still like to see us have a major bike event, whether city-sponsored or a collaborative effort with businesses in the city or other towns, and because the MS bike ride was really a lot of
Yeah,
fun
that's
for
nice.
not only people in the community, but it really did bring a lot of folks here.
I think one of the major areas that we need to look at is Main Street. You know, it's really not bicycle friendly, and the Sharrows are nice, but I
Do they
think we
work? Huh?
really need bike lanes on
Mhm.
each side. So
Okay,
something that's on the list, something we need to look at down the road in terms of, you know, creating some kind of a street that allows for safe bicycling.
right. Okay, so the next item is honoring all of Yavapai County's fallen soldiers. And Phil Good is here tonight, and he actually brought this project to me, and what they're trying to do is add to the names that have inadvertently been left off of the memorial at the county courthouse. And so we're going to read, we have several proclamations, but I asked the city clerk to make a special one for somebody that's very near and dear to our hearts, and so I'm going to read that one first. And before I do that, I would just like to thank the city clerk, Marianne Jimenez, who worked very diligently on this project, along with Betty, who's here tonight, and Phil, because as Marianne worked with them, they found other names, and hopefully we have a complete list now of those who should be remembered. And you worked really hard on that, put a lot of time into it, and I was very confident that I didn't have to spend much time on it myself, because I knew that you are detailed oriented and you would get it right. So thank you very much for your work on this, and it's meant a lot to you also.
Yes, and I worked, actually, it was Betty who sent me all the information and would double-check the proclamation each time I updated it with names that she would send me to make sure that they were spelled correctly and had the dates. So it was
Right.
a pleasure working with you, Betty.
It was a pleasure working with you.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it.
And we're going to talk a little bit about Betty here after we get done with this. But we have Sophia Russell here tonight, and we're very honored to have you in our presence. And we're going to have a special proclamation for her son, Jonam. Whereas some 187 veterans of the armed forces from Yavapai County have given their lives in various wars in defense of freedom, and whereas the city of Cottonwood and Yavapai County as a whole should honor their service and sacrifice in perpetuity, and whereas there is a plaque that exists on the Yavapai County Courthouse grounds in Prescott, which will be rededicated on June 14th, 2016 at noon. It's known as the All Veterans Memorial Plaque. And whereas the name of First Lieutenant Jonam Russell, U.S. Army, from Cottonwood, Cornville, who sacrificed his life on July 23, 2013, while serving in Afghanistan, will be added to the All Veterans Memorial Plaque. Now, therefore, I, Diane Jones, Mayor of the City of Cottonwood, encourage the citizens of this city to honor, on the 14th day of June 2016, these veterans and all those who have fallen in military service to our nation during times of war, by flying the United States flag at half-staff, attending the ceremony, or pausing for a moment of silence at 12 noon in remembrance of their heroic sacrifice. So if I could get the council to come up with me to give this proclamation to Miss Russell in honor of her beloved son, Jonam. So we want to give you this proclamation in honor of your beautiful son, still missed by his family, his mama, and all of the citizens of our communities. You're welcome. So we do have Phil Good with us tonight, and he has been a catalyst in getting this project done. I think he's been out doing a lot of fundraising and getting the word out. And then we also want to talk about Betty. And in 2015, so Betty, how do you pronounce your last name? Borgalt. Borgalt. Notice that the Veterans Memorial Plaque in Prescott had not been updated to include the names of the servicemen that had lost their lives since the Desert Storm War in 1991. Betty began to research information regarding the servicemen from Prescott that had lost their lives since 1991, which led to research on servicemen from Yavapai County. Following Betty's letter to the editor of the Prescott Courier in May of 2015 regarding the need to update the memorial plaque, Phil Good, a U.S. Army veteran, offered to help her in her endeavor to update the Veterans Memorial. In an article dated September 2nd, 2015 from the Prescott E-News, Phil is quoted as saying, "Betty's interest and diligent efforts to uncover and document the historical records of Prescott, Yavapai County, and its residents helps our history come alive. Due to historians like Betty, we can truly enjoy the great and significant heritage that Prescott and Yavapai County is known for. She certainly helped me to recognize a historical deficiency that needed to be corrected on our Veterans Memorial Monument." So we actually have proclamations for both Betty and Phil. Proclamation, honoring all of Yavapai County's fallen soldiers. Whereas some 187 veterans of the armed forces from Yavapai County have given their lives in various wars in defense of freedom, and whereas the city of Cottonwood and Yavapai County as a whole should honor their service and sacrifice in perpetuity, and whereas there is a plaque that exists on the Yavapai County Courthouse grounds in Prescott, which will be rededicated on June 14th, 2016 at 12 noon, known as the All Veterans Memorial Plaque. And whereas the names of the following veterans from the Verde Valley will be added to the All Veterans Memorial Plaque. First Lieutenant Jonam Russell, U.S. Army, from Cottonwood, Cornville, who sacrificed his life on July 23, 2013, while serving in Afghanistan. Gunnery Sergeant Edward Pete Reeder, U.S. Marine Corps, from Camp Verde, killed in action August 21, 2004 in Fallujah, Anbar Province, Iraq, in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. Private First Class Billy R. Bennett, U.S. Army, from Cottonwood, who died during the Vietnam War on December 1, 1966. Lieutenant J.G. Ross M. Lockhart, U.S. Navy, from Cornville, who died August 13, 1950, during the Korean War. Corporal Jesse M. Gayton, U.S. Army, from Jerome, who was killed in action on September 27, 1950, during the Korean War. Sergeant Robert T. Lupke, Royal Air Force, from Clarkdale, who died October 27, 1942, missing from an operational reconnaissance flight during World War II. Second Lieutenant Joseph L. Nichols, U.S. Army Air Force, born in Cornville, who died November 10, 1943, during World War II. First Lieutenant Herbert V. Young, Jr., U.S. Army Air Force, from Clarkdale, shot down over New Guinea on April 10, 1944, during World War II. Private Pilar Muñiz, Jr., U.S. Marine Corps, from Jerome, who died July 28, 1944, during World War II. First Lieutenant Charles G. Morris, U.S. Army Air Force, from Camp Verde, who died in 1944, missing, lost in flight over the Central Pacific during World War II. Sergeant Bennett Dale Heights, Jr., U.S. Army, from Clarkdale, who died February 28, 1945, during World War II. Private Adolfo V. Fritz, U.S. Army, from Jerome, who was killed in action on April 28, 1945, in the Philippines during World War II. Private First Class Gabriel M. Olvera, U.S. Army, from Jerome, who was killed in action May 11, 1945, during World War II. Corporal Charles M. Dewey, a miner living in Jerome, who was killed in action on September 6, 1918, in France during World War I. Private Walter H. Grant, U.S. Army, a miner living in Jerome, who died October 18, 1918, in France during World War I. Now therefore, I, Diane Jones, Mayor of the City of Cottonwood, encourage the citizens of the city to honor, on the 14th day of June 2016, these veterans and all those who have fallen in military service to our nation during times of war by flying the United States flag at half-staff, attending the ceremony, or pausing for a moment of silence at 12 noon in remembrance of their heroic sacrifice. And I would also like to mention that Councilmember Ruben Howdegui lost a brother, David, in the Vietnam War, and the year and date and year, if you recall.
1970.
In 1970. So we also want to remember David today. And if we could all just take a moment of silence to think about those who have provided the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom. If we could have Phil and Betty come up to accept their proclamations from council. Let's go down. In honor of Roger, if you would pass this out. In honor of your service and your brother David, if you would pass this out.
Mayor and council members, I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that I fought in Vietnam.
Thank you. Thank you for your service, Phil.
In 1970, and I lost a number of friends in that war. And I consider it a privilege and an honor to work on this project, to make these corrections, and to add these new generation of veterans who lost their lives fighting for the United States. And I appreciate your taking the time to do this. And I hope that as many people from Cottonwood, Cornville, and Camper can attend this ceremony because it's important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And did you want to introduce your other members who are here with us tonight?
Yeah, also with me tonight is Julie Holst. She's our event coordinator that's working on the ceremony itself.
Okay.
And we had 3 other additional veterans who worked on this project. Bill Halpin and Bill Dunn, both officers from the VFW post in Prescott Valley, along with Dick Marley, Korea veteran, and Josh Holt, who represented this new generation of veterans, who's the past commander for the VFW post in Prescott.
Okay, thank you very much. It was a great honor to have you here to work with you on this project and to honor these people that have given so much. Thank you very much for what you're doing in their memories. The next item is the call to the public. This portion of the agenda is set aside for the public to address the council regarding an item that is not listed on the agenda for discussion. However, the council cannot engage in discussion regarding any item that is not officially listed on the agenda and for discussion and/or action per A.R.S. 38-431-02H. Comments are limited to a 5-minute time period. Is there anyone who wants to talk about something that is not on the agenda? Okay. I would like to move up item number, so we'll close the floor to the public.
We have to do approval of the minutes first.
Well, I'm going to move up an item before we do that. So I would like to move up item number 3 under new business, which is request to waive sections 9.12030 and 1316.010 of the municipal code for the Tilted Earth Music and Wine Festival scheduled for June 17th through 18th, 2016 at Riverfront Park, and for the authorization to close certain parking areas at the park during that event. Mr. Allen.
Madam Mayor, Council, this should be pretty straightforward. Tilted Earth is requesting the approval of, waiver for Municipal Code Section 9.12.030, which prohibits glass containers at Riverfront Park. 2, a second event-specific waiver, Municipal Code Section 13.16.010, which prohibits the use of water or misting systems to cool outdoor areas. And 3, closure of certain parking, and we request closures of certain parking areas at Riverfront Park. So basically, the first waiver request, it's a wine event. Wineries obviously bring their product in glass. So the second one, the misting systems, we want to let you know that that's just for emergency situations. That would just be in the first aid tent. We won't have these giant misting systems set up. We're not even sure if we're going to use the misting systems for this event, but if it came to a scenario where it's going to be record heat for that weekend, we'd like to have the availability in case for that hour and a half, 2 hours that the sun's pretty bright that we could use that. And then lastly, we hope to have camping as a part of this festival, and so one of the parking lots will be used for RV camping, and then the other lots surrounding the park would be used for festival parking. Are there any questions?
Questions, Mr. Pratt?
This makes a lot of sense to me, so much sense that it seems like a no-brainer. We approved it last year and it worked well. We didn't have problems with the glass. They didn't use the misters that much.
I think a couple, 2 or 3 year, 2 years. Yeah, this is the third
Yeah.
event. I think they've come to us with this every year.
It's a great event. And encouraging people to camp is a good idea.
Yes.
I mentioned it last year too, just about the misting systems. I think it's important that we, stick to our code. I think we discussed it last year as just being in the triage area in case somebody needs first aid or needed to cool down, that we would have that available to them. But again, conservation is very important. I think it's especially important to let folks, this is marketed primarily to the folks down in Phoenix who biggest consumers of water in our state. So I think it's important too for them to realize that conservation is very important in greater Arizona, and we don't want them to get too used to seeing misting systems and realize that, other parts of the state are, doing their best to make sure that Phoenix still has an adequate water supply. So anyway, I think I do attend the committee meetings, and I don't remember that coming up, that it would just be used in the first aid section. So I hope that that's how we're going to use it this year.
Right. And really, we haven't really discussed it in the committee meetings because it hasn't been brought forward. Again, it's more to allow some flexibility in case there is a need, if there's record heat for that weekend.
So the way I feel about it, and we talked about the same thing last year, is that we are here to protect the health, safety, and welfare of people that are attending this. And conservation is absolutely, you're right, is very important, but having somebody die because of heat stroke would be rather important also. So I really think that in this case, because June is a very hot month, we've got little kids, we've got moms with babies, we've got families, we've got elderly coming to this, and if we need to cool people off for 2 days, I don't have a problem with it. And so I don't know how the rest of the council feels, but that's something that's brought up every year, so.
I think for emergency purposes, it's extremely important.
So just keep conservation in mind.
Okay. We'll turn it down.
But be sure you take care of people and make sure no one has heat exhaustion or whatever also.
Okay.
So, Mr. Pratt,
Is it time for a motion?
are there any comments from the public on this item? Mr. Pratt, please.
I move to waive Cottonwood Municipal Code Sections 9.12.030 and 13.16010 for the Tilted Earth Music Wine Festival to be held at Riverfront Park on June 17th and 18th, 2016, and to authorize staff to close certain parking areas during that event.
Second.
Mr. Pratt made the motion, the vice mayor seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Approval of the minutes. Approval of the regular meeting of April 19th, 2016, and May 3rd of 2016.
I move we approve the minutes.
Second.
The vice mayor made the motion, Mr. Elinsky seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Comments regarding items listed on the agenda are limited to a 5-minute time period per speaker. Consent agenda. The following items are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the council and will be approved by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or a citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence on the agenda. Item number 1 is amendment to intergovernmental agreement for emergency dispatch services with Verde Valley Fire District. Would a council member like to pull that for discussion?
No.
Is there anyone from the public who would like to pull that item for discussion? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Mr. Elinsky made the motion, the vice mayor seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. New business. The following items are for council discussion, consideration, and possible legal action. Okay, item number 1 is airport hangar site leases. Okay, and Mr. Scott?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I think you're all familiar with the history behind the airport site lease, but I thought for the sake of the audience, I'd give a brief background. There are 6 sites at the Cottonwood Airport that have a 25-year lease, and on those 25-year leases, they are just land leases. They are not leasing buildings, meaning the city leased the land, a individual or an entity came along and built the improvements and leased the land for a 25-year lease. The city has been approached by a few individuals over the last years to either increase that 25-year lease an additional 15 years or change some of the language within that 25-year lease. At the council meeting on October 5th, 2016, council discussed this and they asked staff to go gather more data and find out how do other airports deal with this and how does the FAA and other entities, how do they deal with these situations? So that brings us up to today. So staff reached out to 11 different airports, the FAA, or the city's risk retention pool, and our city-attained aviation attorney. Of those 11 airports, none of them have a written policy on what to do to extend long-term leases. It's something they deal with when the lease comes up. A few notable items that came up during those conversations, the manager of the Deer Valley Airport mentioned that they have a non-written policy that they will go after any lease that entitles the airport to the improvements. These improvements, there's a statement in the lease saying everything left on site after the lease ends becomes property of the city without compensation to the tenant. So that was a statement from the Deer Valley Airport manager. He mentioned that would also be true for all 3 City of Phoenix airports. A few other airports that were of interest, the City of Prescott mentioned that they recently took ownership after a long-term lease. They took ownership of the improvements. However, they also, at the end of one of those long-term leases, they renegotiated and extended the lease. But again, that was done right near the end of the lease. I did talk to the City of Mesa, Falcon Field, I believe is the name of the airport manager there. He mentioned that they did also renegotiate a long-term lease. In his opinion, it was a bad business decision for the airport, but they did renegotiate it towards the end of the lease. Staff's recommendation at this point is that any renegotiations or anything that would change within the lease, that would best be dealt with within the last 12 months of the lease. To try to value something that is so long out, I think the nearest term is 4 years out. Many of these are 11, 12 plus years out. So our recommendation is we wait until that last 12 months when it can be easily evaluated. Trying to evaluate something 4 years from now, 10 years from now is a very difficult task. So that's staff's recommendation. We did reach out to our city aviation attorney. We also reached out to our engineering consultants, as well as the FAA, and those emails are all included in your packets if you have any questions on those.
Mr. Elinsky?
In your research with these other airports, when they renegotiate a lease, do they consider the improvement that's been complete to the property as part of the
Absolutely.
renegotiation? Okay.
That's part of the valuation. So they'll not only consider the improvements that are made to the property, they'll consider the current economic situation, everything else that goes into the value of that lease.
But you weren't able to find any written policy from any Arizona airport?
No, we only reached out to one airport out of state. I believe that was Cortez, Colorado.
And same thing, no written policy?
That's
So
correct.
do they have a commission or an authority then that renegotiates those leases, or is it based on city staff that renegotiates the leases? How do they typically accomplish that?
Probably either if they have an airport authority or if it's to the city council, then it would probably go to that governing body.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't ask that question, I apologize.
Madam Mayor, Mr. Alinsky, if I might, this is a pretty standard commercial lease arrangement where the value of a tenant improvement is amortized over a period of time.
Mhm.
It's, again, as Morgan said, it's really difficult to value something very far out because valuation by definition is what a willing buyer will pay a willing seller in an arm's length transaction at that particular time. So projecting out becomes even more of an art than it is trying to value something that's fairly unique currently.
Mm-hmm.
In the case of, and this is on the agenda because of Mr. Minch's request that the council consider doing something other than maintaining the status quo right now. Right now, he's paying about $150 a month for his site. Our research.
We'll give you a chance. We'll give you a chance.
$600 a quarter, $591 a quarter for his site, according to his lease, anyway. And staff's research suggests that the value of a hangar right now, the rental value of a hangar, is probably around, of that size, a 5,000 square foot hangar, is around $2,000 a month. So we're in the middle of that initial 25-year lease term. So if you look at the amortization, and again, sophisticated parties, the city, Mr. Minch, on behalf of his family trust, entered into this lease in 2005. And the lease said that the improvements revert to the city at the end of that term. If you take this as the midpoint and say that the value of the improvements, the improved property, was less at the beginning and it'll be more at the end, you're talking about $500,000 in amortization. That may be off. That may be off by a lot. But that's the business risk that parties that enter into these kinds of transactions take.
Can I ask another question? I'm sorry, go ahead, Terrence.
Mr. Pratt?
Yeah, I just wanted to be sure that I was reading through the recommendations from the FAA, and number 4 says methodology is equitably applied to similarly situated tenants. Example, similar tenant uses are treated similarly, and then number 7 says methodology is uniformly applied to all applicants willing to make use of the airport. And I wanted to ensure that we were following that we do have a consistency there, and that comes from the FAA. That seems very important to me that we do that. And
Yes,
hopefully we are doing that.
And
Mr.
Madam Mayor,
Horton.
Mr. Pratt, the other thing that's probably, that is even more important than the FAA's expectations of the city is the state constitution. And this discussion and whatever the council decides is constrained by what the Arizona Constitution says.
And I want to ask a couple questions, if you
Sure.
don't mind. I just want to be clear on that point that you're making now, and we've talked about it before, but just for everyone else's benefit, that the reason why this land must revert back to this city is because the parties in the contract signed on the dotted line that this land would revert back to the city at the end of the 25-year term. That's why it would be a violation of the gift clause if we were to do anything but that. Is that correct?
No.
Okay. Dang
No,
it.
it's a little different than that. There's two important points you make.
Okay.
The reason that the fee title to the airport property has to remain in the city is because the city has to continue, as a matter of the millions of dollars in grant funding we've received from the FAA and the state, we've promised to maintain it as a public airport. So we can't be transferring title to the property. What the gift clause says is any time the city transfers value by way of property or property rights or other valuable things to another party, it must serve some public purpose, and the city must receive adequate consideration for it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the gift clause piece of it.
Okay. I thought that's what I said, but maybe not. I wanted to ask a question, too, about, the point I'm trying to make is that the parties agreed to those terms, that at the end of the lease, the improvements would revert back to the city at the end of the 25-year lease. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then the council, some years back, in 6 or 8, whenever that was, we decided that 7, was it?
2008.
2008, that we would give 15-year renewal option to all parties.
Right, and in the council's packet are the minutes of that discussion, and I've been consulting with another very good public lawyer who expressed some concerns, the same concerns I had in 2008, which is, and it's reflected in the minutes, that that what those amendments did, and there's an argument that those amendments, no matter how you construe them, lacked adequate consideration. So they would be void because there can't be anything given without fair consideration. So to the extent there was a valuable right given by the council to Mr. Minch in 2008 or anybody else without consideration, there's an argument to be made that those are ineffective. But to the extent they are effective, what they do is they create a duty on the part of the city to sit down and negotiate at the end of the lease term, the initial lease term, in good faith for the renewal term and adequate rent before it does anything else, before it simply takes ownership of the improvements or does anything else.
Okay. So my question then for Morgan would be, in your research again of other airports across the state and up in Colorado, what were the lease terms that were agreed to? What was the length of the leases typically?
The majority were 40-year leases. Quite
Okay.
a few were 25-year. Very few that were 50-year.
But the majority were around 40, right?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
And that's a concern of mine, is that, as I've said before, I personally wouldn't have signed the leases that were signed, but they were signed, and we have to deal with that situation now. But I think 25 years is just too short a term to put in that amount of improvements on the property and amortize it out. I think in my opinion, it's short, but that's just my opinion. I think it's important that we have some kind of a written policy. I mean, our goal is economic development up there. That's why this whole thing was ever drafted in the beginning, was to promote economic development at the airport. And I think that's what everybody here wants right now. I just feel like without some sort of clear written policy on what to expect at the end of your term, then it's going to be really difficult to encourage other businesses to move up there and make that investment. Everything is just so, it's just hard to know what's going to happen at the end of your term. It's creating a lot of uncertainty. I think it's our job to provide certainty as landlords to the tenants to know what to expect at the end of their term. And looking over all the different, costs per square foot per year, I mean, it's really across the charts. And I think that's, I wish there was some way that we could level that out. So, we have escalators in there. We do base it off market rates, but not at a point in time, but more like any landlord would. When you have a place that you're going to rent, you base it on the market at that time, but not necessarily based on an appraisal, but just based on the trends over a 5 or 10 year period. I think it's something that we try to accomplish with the escalator in here, but I just think it's across the charts. I think it's important to have something that's more consistent.
So if we had a policy, would there be any type of unintended consequence that we wouldn't be thinking of as we created it, since no other airport has one? I mean, what would be legal constraints what would we run into?
Well, Madam Mayor, I think the policy would have to be a lawful policy. So it would have to reflect that any changes made to leases, would have to protect the public interest. And that's as a matter of public policy, but that's your province. But also as a matter of the state constitution, any value transferred from the public trust by the council to private parties would have to be in return for fair consideration.
I think that, having been on the council for quite a few years now, and the vice mayor's been on the council for 24, almost 25 years, since my time on the council's always been very supportive of the pilots, the leases, wanting to ensure economic development. We're always interested in how many jobs will be provided by the new lease. That's of interest. I have never seen the council, and we've had several changes in who serves, not be supportive of pilots and wanting them to be successful in their endeavors, and always acknowledging during discussions of what they do bring to the community, which is a great deal. The other piece of this that Mr. Minch will get you. We're going to allow you to speak. definitely allow you. The other piece of this is that the airport belongs to the citizens of Cottonwood. And so in the lease agreements and all of those things, if we, as I understand it, if we take something away from the citizens that own it, you know, the gift clause and the U.S. Constitution and all the things that our attorney talks about comes into play. So we kind of have a dual role as council members of supporting our pilots, helping them in any way we can, encouraging their businesses, being proud of our airport and excited about our airport because it is a wonderful feature that many people in the communities, even not just in Cottonwood, but all over the Verde Valley and even Sedona appreciate and use. And so I have never seen that the council wasn't supportive of the pilots. What we have to weigh is any decision-making is, you know, are we taking anything away from citizens during our decision-making? And I think that's where our attorney is coming from, is we have a dual duty here. And how do we balance that and make sure that we do the correct thing? And there's a rumor going around that I heard it, that the city council wants to take away the leases and the property of our people that have leases, and that there's just no foundation in that at all. I have never heard any council member speak to me in private or public about just waiting until that lease comes up so the city can grab it. I mean, we don't want to be in charge of a lot of property. I would assume that the leases go on for a long, long time, and that the families of the pilots and the trusts of the pilots also, you know, get some value from that. And we hope that it's been a beneficial tax deduction, you know, for pilots during the years that they've had these leases. But how do we do something? I mean, like you're advising, is that there is, because of FAA rules, there's escalator clauses and things become more valuable to the citizens for the work that the pilots have done and the improvements they've put on those lands and used and enjoyed. But there is concern about the future, and I understand that too.
So, Madam Mayor, what you're speaking to is the FAA's position, or the FAA's requirements of us come in the form of grant assurances, which really are in the nature of contract. Then there is, and we certainly have to be
just a
mindful
Microphone.
of.
Could you speak into your?
I'm sorry. So we have to be mindful because we are under an open audit by the FAA about our business practices at the airport. Then there's I said, the public policy considerations, which are your lane. But there is also separately the constitutional mandate. And of all those things, of all the different perspectives that you have to apply to these facts, the Constitution is the one that's the least movable and least flexible, and the one that constrains the council the most. You have to make sure that whatever value you give to a private party that they are not otherwise currently entitled to results in fair compensation back to the public.
To the public. Okay, so the council did, at the time that we instructed you to research some of this, we did authorize or suggest that you seek a second opinion or a third opinion, and can you explain whether you complied with that?
Yes, and a matter of fact, I just consulted with the attorney I consulted with, who's also a very preeminent public attorney in the state, Bill Sims. He is the general counsel for our risk pool. He serves as town attorney for a number of municipalities. He's a Rhodes Scholar, doesn't hurt. And he concurs that this
So the
what
issue
the council
with
does
the
is
gift
constrained
clause-
by the gift clause. And he reminded me, there's a very famous case, you all probably remember from 2010, the state Supreme Court weighed in, interpreted the gift clause in the case of an arrangement between the city of Phoenix and a developer over parking spaces and tax incentives. And the takeaway from that case is indirect benefits, enhanced tax revenues, those sorts of things do not count as consideration under the gift clause, because it's not the party with whom the public entity is bargaining that's giving those things. So those are considered indirect benefits, so those don't satisfy the consideration requirement of the gift clause. Bill reminded me that there's another more recent case from last summer from the Court of Appeals that I think is going up to the state Supreme Court about public safety officer benefits. So it's a different context. But the Court of Appeals said in that holding that the consideration, the adequacy of the consideration is determined at the time of whatever transaction is taking place. So in this case, the adequacy of the consideration for a renewal of a lease at the end of a 25-year term would be much closer to the end of a 25-year term. Again, because there is no way to determine what is adequate and what is not adequate very far out. And to Tim's point that the certainty, even if it was a 100-year lease, at the end of the term ends at some point, and the certainty diminishes as the term gets toward its end. So it's not so much the number, it's the fact that as you get toward the end of a term certain, then the uncertainty increases.
But the leases all do say that the city will give every consideration to the leaseholder in a discussion of renewing the lease.
And that's what the amendments say. The leases don't say that,
the
but I think
amendments.
as a matter of policy and practice, that's what would have happened anyway.
So, Mr. Garrison?
The second chart you provided was a hangar rental comparison throughout Arizona. How many of those are owned by the entity versus a person? So I don't see that broken out. So are all these hangars that are listed, or all these facilities, are all those owned by that municipality or that government entity?
I apologize, I didn't ask when I did that research. I didn't ask.
So we don't know if what they're paying $2.32 a foot for is hangar and ground or ground under the hangar.
No, we do know that. We do know they're paying for the hangar. So that's the hangar,
So
the ground, everything.
There really is no comparison with that chart.
Yes, the reason we put this together is that's what the city could reasonably expect to get if it rented out the hangar after the 25-year lease. And there was a question raised. I apologize, Madam Mayor. I don't know if I was supposed to ask for permission to speak.
Oh, no,
I
please
didn't-
do, please do.
Am I answering going in the right direction with your question, Randy?
Yeah.
Okay. Councilman Garrison, I apologize.
No, it's perfect. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Could everyone please speak up? Mr. Minch can't hear, and that's got to be. No one can hear, and that has to be very aggravating, and I apologize. I apologize. Yes, I apologize for that. So if everyone could please speak up. Thank you.
Where I'm having a problem with this is I've been trying to, you go back up to Mr. Pratt's original statement, is if you go through the 1 through 7 of the FAA's indicators of what they consider negotiating and extending leases, every bit of that has to do with transparency and equity. Every single one of them, and in some manner. And what we're doing and have been doing up there really is none of that. And I'm trying to figure out, and I've been an advocate of changing our method of how we deal with the value of that land up there and how we value how we value the leases up there, on some method that creates a price per square foot of land, period. And if you go to your chart, you've got it down here. The 100-year lease is off-site, developed and undeveloped. We've figured that out to be $1.12. Our covered tie downs are 49 cents 56 cents a foot. So we've kind of already set some boundaries or some guidelines on how we price property. And, I understand that the contract says at the end of the 25 years, you walk out the door and you leave your hangar, and if you want to come back and get it, we'll sit down and talk to you about it. And now we're going to pile on, an appraisal and an increased fee and all this. And I understand, Mr. Horton's argument about gift of public funds, but when I'm looking over the price per square foot that we're charging people for leases, and it ranges anywhere from the same 56 cents a foot that we're charging under a tie down to around 24 cents, but I'm not quite sure how that works out. But for the most part, they're in the 50 to 56 cent range. We're getting basically the same price per square foot under a tie down as we are under a hangar. So I don't see where we're having a gifting of public money. They've been paying the same rent in essence the entire time they've held that lease. And what you're asking them to now pay more for is the investment that they put into that property in the very first place. And that's where I'm having a problem with it. I think all we're doing is over this I'm right mentality is we're creating just a problem, a Pandora's box of issues up there at that facility that's going to really, at the end of the day, stop all development of that facility. Nobody is going to want to come up there and deal with that if they know that these are the restrictions that are going to be placed on them going forward. And I think that the lease was thrown out there. I think it was put together and it was put out, and everybody entered into those leases in good faith without necessarily a full comprehension of the clause that said that would be gifted back at some point in time. And the other part of that is the lease says that they can pull that out of there up to the last day of ownership of that lease. So, I don't know. I'm just having a real problem with this. I want to see us get this facility back and all the properties up there back to something that resembles a common thread of how we deal with that property over the entire airport grounds, regardless of whether it's inside or outside the fence, and whether it's under a plane that's sitting on a tie down or it's under a plane that's sitting inside a hangar. So that's why I've asked for this to be brought in and for us to be able to sit here and have this discussion with them, because we keep having all these discussions, but they have it with the lawyer, we have it with the lawyer, and we haven't had a chance to sit here and have this discussion in public. So anyway, I appreciate putting the charts together, but I'm not quite sure they really made it any easier for me to understand the mentality of where we're going with.
Yeah,
Oh, yes, Mr. Pratt, please.
I agree. I think, this is a critical issue for Cottonwood. I think we need to, again, we're not utilizing the airport to the extent we should as a economic development driver. It really can be that. We're just kind of obfuscating the issue. There really doesn't seem to be a consistency. So I agree with you a lot that we have a quagmire here, and we really want, and I've talked to numerous airport users, and there is some discontent up there. We want happy airport users because it's good for them, it's good for the city, and it's good for our citizens. So I think we need to arrive at something that is just really clear, concise, and consistent, and consider the ideas of some of these folks who are using the airport. They're in the know.
Mr. Elinsky.
I think we should sit down and get a written policy that's put together from all the stakeholders, in our community, not just, definitely get the airport commission involved, some of the users up there at the airport, perhaps another airport manager from another community, our attorney, another FAA, or maybe not our attorney, an FAA attorney, someone that is more
You would say
familiar
our
with
our
the
attorney shouldn't be involved?
Well, obviously he will be involved. He's our city attorney, but I just mean someone
I
who,
just- I'm just trying
who
to
specializes
figure out
more
what
in,
you're
in what it is that we're dealing with here. You know, if I'm a business owner and I'm looking to locate my business to a community, and I want to locate at the airport, I'm going to look at what their policy is. And if I'm looking to move to an airport that doesn't have any written policy, where they say, "Come on in, we'll give you a lease, and we'll negotiate at the end. Don't worry, everything will work out fine." Or if I look at a written policy that says this is exactly what you can expect if you lease your property from us, I'm going to go with the community that has a written policy that I know exactly what to expect. So I think that's where we need to go with this, is get something in writing that everyone can agree to, that's clear, concise. And I wouldn't be surprised if other airports in the area started to do the same thing. You know, we want to promote that airport as an economic driver.
So tell me what it should say.
Well, I mean, I don't know, because I'm not sitting down with all the stakeholders. Again, you know, it's public property, so we can't just have the airport users up there because they've got a vested interest in, I mean, we have to have all sides at the table. So, I mean, I personally, I think I've shared with the council how some of the elements I think it should have, which would be, definitely we need to have escalators in there. They're based somewhat on market, but I think it should just be, a very forward schedule that you can, you know what to expect at the end of 5 years. Your rent's going to go up this amount. At the end of 10 years, it's going to go up this amount. We can look back in history. We can track what the square foot cost has been for commercial property. I mean, we have, the methodology will be reasonably formulated, and all these other things that they indicate. We should apply all this methodology from the FAA. But
Because I mean, if we're going to direct our staff to do something, I think you need to be more explicit in what you want.
Okay, well,
and what you expect.
A work session of stakeholders to put together a written policy for the leases up at the airport.
Why don't we hear from Mr. Minch now, so we can see what they have in mind? So far, it's just been us, and we really haven't heard from our airport users.
Okay, so every airport user that would like to speak, I just have three forms, but anybody is welcome to speak, and we encourage you to. So if something is said, and you haven't filled out a form, but then you want to respond or something, please just get one in the back, and we'll be happy to hear anybody that wants to speak tonight. So Mr. Minch, please.
Yes, I'd like to respond to some of the information that I consider incorrect.
Okay.
I think your idea is pretty good to get something going straight. Amanda up there at Sedona would help a lot. She's the new manager, and that would be really good insight into what's going on here. And I noticed that this whole thing didn't include Sedona. It's the nearest airport to us, and it's probably one of the more likely ones that are about the same size as we are, although it's a vibrant, busy airport. We aren't. I'll show you. I'll show you that later. Louder? Okay, how's that? First of all, the tie downs, Mr. Scott and I measured them. They're 1,200 feet, I think 1,196. If you divide that by the $118.50 a quarter, you get 39 cents a square foot. My hangar's 50, they aren't the same. But that wasn't really the whole idea of what goes on here. The first thing that I'd like to do is pass out to council members and everybody the background that I have for the items I'm going to cover.
Thank you.
And while I'm doing this, please look at page 4. And these things don't work very good.
Especially in.
I've underlined a word in page 4, and it's pretty significant in this instance. She's a guy. Okay, then get back to Mr. Dodd.
Is there anybody in the audience who would like to have a copy of this?
I'm going to check you out.
Are there any more copies for someone in the audience that might wish to?
I'd be happy to submit it for anybody that can copy. You'll notice a nice word there called reversion. I think you're playing a dangerous game here. FAA has two remedies for the game you're playing. One is no more funding, and the second one is reversion. And that means the airport that you're so considered about, they take it back. And it has to do with an exclusive right. The term of 3 leases up there have a 25 and 15 lease. Mine has a 25, it ends at 25, and it says the date it ends. And then I have a 15-year option. I signed it, but I didn't know at the time that FAA has such a absolute disdain for exclusive rights. An exclusive right is exactly what's going on. 3 leases up there, 40 years total. The last 15, they negotiate just the ground. My lease, 25 years, I'm out. But I can negotiate again for my building and the ground. That's called an exclusive right. And I gave you the background in there that'll tell you all exactly what's going on. You can consider that a threat that will answer Mr. Horton's, look on the last page, Mr. Horton's plea or wording that the Constitution won't let you do that. He said on 11/20/07, Mr. Horton replied, absolutely not. It guarantees only that the city will sit and negotiate in 25 years. That's in response to my lease, when I didn't know about exclusive rights. But if a party is credibly threatening to litigate against the city, it may wish to make concessions. If legal counsel does not believe that the suit has, even if legal counsel does not believe that the suit has merit, it will cost money to defend, and the city could elect to offer concessions. The state would not second guess the city's decision to avoid the cost and uncertainty of inherent litigation. Well, that sounds like if they threaten to take the airport away from you, like the FAA might do, that's their second alternative. If you don't get rid of this exclusive right, that sounds like a really good threat, a really good reason that this whole Constitution thing is just not valid in this situation. Talk about, you're going to have another discussion or meeting with whoever. The last 2 meetings you had about the Airport Commission prior to this one, where it was on an agenda, were sessions that was executive sessions. I asked both you, Mayor, Madam Mayor, and both you, Mr. Bartosh, if I could come and speak at those sessions just to give you the other side of the coin and what's going on and what it means and what an exclusive right means. You've excluded 3 of us hangar owners from the same right you've given 3 others. If it's 5 cents a year, if it's 5,000, whatever it is, same thing should be true, as you said, Mr. Garrison. It should be even. They're all listed as being non-discriminatory. It says that throughout all the FAA writings. And if you look through those writings, and I underlined all the important parts, you'll begin to wonder what's going on. Why you're being told not to change my lease and the 2 others, why you're being told not to change those. And you're risking losing the airport, according to FAA. Grant Assurance 22 is the only grant assurance I can find. Maybe somebody else can tell me more. Grant Assurance 22 is the only one that has a prescribed penalty if you violate it. You are in violation of Grant Assurance 22. If you want me to enumerate the others, why I think that they don't hold water, I'd be happy to do that. But the reversion thing would scare the heck out of me. I believe that a little comparison too is in order. Airport road leases, those are the commercial properties. I discussed that with Mr. Scott, and they pay $440 an acre a year. He said that's about right because it should be maybe $490 an acre. That seemed a little low to me. $440 per acre per year. The ground under my property, I pay $21,818 per acre per year. That's certainly, I mean, my gosh. What does that mean? How can you sit there and just ignore equality between people, places, contracts, and everything else? And say, we can't do it because the state will come in and say, oh, you're giving them something. You aren't giving me anything. You don't own the hangar until the lease is over. If the lease is over in 25 years, you'll have a piece of ground to lease out. Vacant ground. I don't want to do that, but you leave me no alternative. So anyhow, at this $21,818 per acre per year, I'm guessing that Public Works occupies 2 acres. That would be $43,636 a year the city has to take out of this pocket and put it in the airport fund. Have they done that? That's what you're charging me. The city should pay the same thing to the airport fund as you're charging me. Maybe more because that's commercial property. Mine is not. I'm not allowed to do anything commercial, including these $440 an acre per year people over there who can do commercial, they're semis, they can do anything. But I'm 50 times what they pay. I really don't want to cover these other things like the Goldwater Institute that I was quoted as being one of the cases that's very similar to this. I looked them up. I can't find them. The only one I can find that might be similar is far-reaching different. It's a $106 million suit. I don't believe we're also talking about $500,000, as Mr. Horton is saying. I mean, the hangar's worth $275, let's face it. That's what it's worth. Jan's is bigger. Hers was worth $320. I don't know where you get the $500,000. That's really out of sight, anyhow. I believe that it's time that the vague reasoning to avoid doing what's right, it's time to do what FAA demands. And they demand an end to an exclusive right. All the other little points along the way, I'd be glad to debate. But the larger one is the one I'm telling you about, the one I've given you background on. So I think it's time to immediately amend the 3 leases to include the term of 25 and 15 together, the way the other 3 read, using the exact words that exist in those 3 leases. I think you should do that tonight. I think it's important that you don't let this go any farther, because this is an absolute, for Grant Assurance 22, it's an absolute death knell, I think, to what's going on at the airport. After that, I think probably you can negotiate things like leases, rates, everything else. I find it very strange that we come in with a comparison without Sedona. Sedona has leases that go on. At the end of the lease, they renew them with their own building on them. I have a friend who has 4 of them up there. They expire in 2051. And he doesn't pay anywhere near these rates. He owns a hangar, he pays for the property. How can you possibly do what you're doing and continue this absolute disobedience, if you want to call it, of what FAA demands? This is Grant Assurance 22. This was from an online seminar that I took. Please look what it says. And I hope that you'll be able to overcome whatever problem it is that exists. And if you need more information, as far as any contrary opinions to some of those that were given here, I'd be happy to get together to that meeting and not be locked out of it this time as I was last time for 2 meetings. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. You have a question, Mr. Pratt?
Yeah, I think it's becoming more and more clear that those FAA suggestions that I referred to before are very important and needs to be followed. And I think it's becoming more and more clear that we probably should, the city should set up a work session with the airport users, with our city attorney, with an FAA attorney, as we've talked about, with the citizens of Cottonwood, and come up with some kind of policy that ensures equity for everyone and would just end this turmoil and kind of make all people happy and make our airport productive. I really would like to see us move to that and set
Could I
up some
respond to
kind of some kind of work session where we can work all this out.
Yes, Mr. Minch.
3 and 3 leases are pretty self-explanatory.
Right.
All you have to do is read them. And a work session where I come in and I tell you the same thing, it's all written there. Another work session is just another put-off. And I don't think this deserves another put-off because FAA demands that you don't put it off. There's nothing clearer than what I've just told you, and I've given you the background. The whole background is there. The other things that they talked about, like, was Grant Assurance 24. And Grant Assurance 24 is kind of interesting because that's, besides this Constitution thing, which I think has been debunked because Mr. Horton himself said if you're under a credible threat, the state will overlook that. First of all, I don't think they're giving me anything because when I leave with my hangar, you're only going to have a vacant lot for the next 15 years. If I stay with my hangar, you'll at least have the lot to rent, the piece of property. But back to Grant Assurance 24. Is to make the airport as self-sustaining as possible. Notice that self-sustaining and profitable are not interchangeable terms. To quote Mr. Scott, we have to get all the money we can get. Whoa, I can't believe anybody told me that the city wants to get all the money they can get. That sounds very one-sided and not even in the spirit of any fairness and not keeping with the wording of Grant Assurance 24. It also doesn't say you can sell a 15-year lease extension, a hard lease extension, for $85,000 to Mrs. Thompson, as she has told us was offered to her. We want to over the $440 and the $22,000 per acre per year, so you know the differences there are. One more point about this. This thing says nothing about whether it's a hangar and a lot or a lot. I don't know what these numbers are. The other thing about these numbers is we got Mesa Gateway. That's a big airline airport. How do we compare that with Cottonwood? Sedona T Hangar, no information. The Sky Ranch is a closed community. You kind of like join there, and so whatever their rates are have nothing to do with us. Sierra Vista is a long way away, and I don't know what those hangar numbers mean. Chandler's a huge airport, as you've probably read. Oro Valley is really Marana, big airport. Lots going on. And Glendale. Rimrock has a box hangar here, but I don't know what that means. I think that box hangar belongs to the airport and that it is being rented. Hangar and ground together. Anyhow, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Mr. Pratt?
Yeah, just asking a question here of order. The way the agenda is written, it appears that we really can't vote on anything this evening. Is that true?
Madam Mayor, Mr. Pratt, you can, I want to say this carefully because of my, I'd like to respond to a few of the things Mr. Mintz said, but as a matter of procedure, you can take legal action, whether it's void, whether it's unconstitutional. You can take, as a matter of the open meeting law and the way the item's been agendized, you can take action on a matter that's listed on the agenda. With that said, I think you heard a lot of misinformation from Mr. Mintz, both factually and in terms of the law. I'll point out a couple of misstatements. Mr. Mintz reached out to the FAA, as have we, and we've talked. Let me back up and put this in context. If we satisfy the constitutional requirement, all the FAA expectations of the city with respect to its business practices at the airport will be met. Meeting the FAA's expectations of our business practices at the airport doesn't necessarily satisfy the gift clause or avoid violating the gift clause. So to focus on grant assurances, which Mr. Minch, I think, wildly misinterpreted, is a mistake because it ignores the constitutional mandate. And the FAA takes no position on what the Arizona Constitution says or doesn't say. It is true that the FAA could take the sanction, it could remove the city from grant eligibility, but I do not believe the airport was conveyed to the city under the Surplus Act, so reversion of the airport, this is neither here nor there, but reversion of the airport is not one of the possible consequences of even gross misconduct from the FAA's perspective. But Mr. Minch has spoken to the FAA regional representative in Los Angeles, as have I. I spoke to him, as it turns out, soon after Mr. Minch spoke to him. I believe the FAA understands and believes that the city is acting appropriately. Other grant assurances that apply are making the airport as self-sustaining as possible. Even the FAA doesn't want the airport to be a drain on the city's general fund. And I think no matter how Rudy and the council slice the numbers, the airport is and has long been a drain on the city's general fund. So I think that's another issue that the council needs to wrestle with, is how to make the airport self-sustaining. The distinction between what the leases say, the legal effect of every one of those leases in terms of what happens at the termination of the initial term is the same. There is no guarantee given to any other airport lessee that any other lessee does not have.
Are you finished?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Garrison?
Before Mr. Minch goes any further, this is just, it's getting deeper and deeper and muckier, and I think at the end of the day, the city needs to do whatever's simple, transparent, and equitable, and it doesn't have to get convoluted, and we keep going all these different directions on I'm right here and I'm right there, and it just confuses the whole discussion. And also, since she's been brought up twice in Mr. Mensch's address, I had asked for this agenda item to actually be modified and to look at a bigger discussion, one which would have included Ms. Amanda Shanklin, that's sitting in the audience with us tonight. She's the new GM for the Sedona Airport Authority, and I'd asked her to come because I thought we were going to have a little different conversation tonight, but because of the way this has been opened up by Mr. Horton and by Mr. Mensch, one of the reasons I think we're in this mess with the FAA on the entire airport property, which includes everything outside and inside the fence, and we're also in all this mess with the airport hangar owners inside the fence, is that we're not doing a good job of managing our facility. We're not doing a good job of running the business of an airport. And I take nothing away from Morgan whatsoever. I think he's done as good a job as he can at trying to work through this. But the airport, at the end of the day, as Mr. Horton said, was given from the mines to the county as an economic driver. It was given from the county to the city because the county did not have the wherewithal to manage it or use it as economic development. And so it was given to the city to take that charge on. We've gotten to the point with the city where we're not doing it either. And I would like to see us remove this facility from direct city management, put a third party in place of managing this facility, that actually understands all of the FAA guidelines, understands all of the overlaying problems that we're having with the users and the ownership of this facility, and make it very simple moving forward. And everything we keep talking about here is really just going the opposite direction. It's just becoming more complex because we're fighting battles over I'm correct and I'm correct. Instead, at the end of the day, we need to do something, as I started, something that's simple, it's transparent, it's equitable, and make it very easy for everybody to understand, regardless of whether you're a citizen or a user.
Well, I would ask Mr. Horton, if there's no difference in the leases, then why would he not want to put those same words in mine as the others, and there would be no gift because they're already the same? Why? If they're the same, what's the problem? They are not the same. There is a difference. Mine ends in 2029, it's 25, it says it ends. And then the lease continues after that if I want it to or the city wants it to with the hangar on it. The other three leases have 25 and 15 for a term. It's not the same. If it is the same, then please make my lease the same as theirs. And as far as the airport management is concerned, I'm the first hangar there, and I get a lot of those transients and so forth that have a problem. There's no mechanic on the airport. The only mechanic that will come to the airport has continually and still is being denied an entrance card. I don't know why. Here's a guy that comes, if you have a flat on the runway, you dial up Bob Luna and he'll come out and he'll fix your flat. He can't get a card. And that's, I don't know, I don't know who does that. The other thing that happens is, like just 2 weekends ago, in my hangar was the transient that had a problem that wouldn't start. The only hangar can go into is mine. And they worked on it in mine, and when we put the plane back out on the line, after it was done getting its repair, this is what I found. I was trying to find some chalks that I could chalk the airplane. If I go to Payson, who is obviously eliminated on this list, Payson, the tie down is there, and tie down there, there's chalks there, and there's chalks there, and there's stainless steel chains so you don't have to handle the rusty chains. Very nice, a nice touch. We have, there's one chalk. Here's another. These I would really like. where people have gone to the rocks to chop their plane. And you know, management is everything. You want top dollar and top everything, but we need to get an airport that's in the present century and not in the barnstorming age. So anyhow, I really would challenge Mr. Horton to change my lease. It's the same, let's put that wording in it, and then there's no gifting. The gifting goes away, the lease is done, and as far as I'm concerned, everything's over with. As you, Mr. Pradman, I gave you both lines of what it was. You know they're different. You saw that. I think you did too, but I think you did too. And if they're not different, let's get the wording right. If they're the same, then there's the same, but put the same wording in the other one, then there's no gifting. So that whole thing goes away with the Constitution. That seemed to me like it was a pretty far reach, when the nearest thing was in the hundreds of millions of dollars that people were being sued. We're talking about 6 words in a lease. Are we really going to go to jail over that? That's crazy. Anyhow, thanks again for your time.
Thank you for your time. Alan Paxia? Did I say that right?
Close enough.
Okay. Paxia?
Paxia.
Paxia, okay.
Madam Mayor, City Council, thank you for hearing me tonight. My name is Alan Paxia. I live in Cottonwood. I'm at 2300 West Desert Willow. The subject of hangar leases is extremely important to me. My background is I served 13 years as an elected airport commissioner in the state of Washington. I understand and I'm knowledgeable about airports, and I know how federal grants work. I asked the council to take a reasonable position by extending the land lease for the additional 15 years that we expected. I'm the president of the Cottonwood Hangar Association, and we're the ones that have the 6-bay hangar. It's the first one that's going to come up on the lease. It expires in 2020. The value of our hangar today is $270,000. This hangar was constructed at no cost to the city and is owned by the 6 members of the corporation. The city granted our group a 25-year lease. Normally, airport leases are 40 years to allow the amortization of the building. Several years ago, 2008, the city decided to be reasonable, and they granted an option for an additional 15 years. And I have a copy of that, and to my knowledge, the city does not have a copy of the extension that I have. The city wants to take possession of our hangars at the end of the 25 years and then rent them back to us. The city attorney stated, quote, "They fooled the hangar owners. They really didn't get an extension that they thought they were getting in the lease," unquote. It's difficult for us to understand. We believe we have an option, an extension of the land lease, and if we don't, in fact, the court is going to have to decide that. There's a backstory, and the backstory is that the airport property around the fence was leased for 99 years to a few local friends of the city for basically pennies. We know that story. The FAA has requested that the city address those leases, and in the 2 years that I've noticed, there hasn't nothing has been done to correct what's outside the fence. Our hangar is one of 6 hangars that have legitimate land leases, and we're being told to give up the option to extend the lease for the 15 years. The dialogue the city has used with the hangar owners is telling us, quote, "We don't understand what our lease says, and the city doesn't have to give us a land lease extension," unquote. That's baloney. In conclusion, The option to extend for 15 years gives the city the ability to change what they're charging us, and that's fair. It's fair, but it's a land lease. You have no right to our buildings until the end of 40 years. You gave us 25 years, and then you say, you have an option for an additional 15. And then you come back and you say, oh, that option is that we're going to rent it back to you, quote unquote, Mr. Morgan Scott. And I believe Mr. Morgan Scott got that information from Mr. Horton. The owners are being stonewalled. There is no dialogue with the city. It's a made-up, this is the way it's going to be. If you don't like it, tough, because we're not going to negotiate with you until a few months or a year before the lease expires. I asked the council to be reasonable in their position and not allow the administration to violate the rights of the owners of the 5 hangar buildings on the airport. Grant us our 15-year extension on the land lease. I agree with Mr. Garrison, simple, transparent, and equitable. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We appreciate your comments very much. And Dave from the SafariJeepTours.com, Dave Swart.
Dave Swartout with Arizona,
Swartout.
with the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, representative for part of this area. I flew out to California, met with Tony Garcia, the Western rep that some of you guys mentioned. And specifically, our question was to him about, can they raise the rents on our hangars at the airport while there's leases outside, there's the fence that are not at fair market value. And he explained to me that inside the fence, the aviation use of the airport, those uses can be below market value up to fair market value for aviation, and that would be airports in the area. However, and they don't have to be, they can be less expensive. They don't have to be at fair market value, because the grant assurance, this is all about supporting aviation. But he explained that the leases outside the fence, the non-aviation stuff, has to be at fair market value. And he told us the city cannot raise your rates until they have fair market value on those other leases. So he was very, very specific, and I know you can look at all the fair and equitable and all the rules, but this is what he told us. Don't be concerned about them, in a sense, screwing you on your lease until they get their house in order, because the airport's supposed to be self-supporting, but they can't give away airport property for almost nothing or pennies on the dollar. So that's what Tony is saying, and I think, to be honest, I think you're getting some misinformation from your legal sources on the rules.
Excuse me, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, did you get any of that Mr. Garcia told you in writing? Something you can hand in to us?
No.
That's what I was going to ask for also. Nothing in writing? Do you have things in writing?
We do have some emails from Mr. Garcia, and we could invite him out. I've invited him out. He's been here for a meeting about other matters, and his response is usually, if I'm making a trip to the area, I won't make a special trip. But we could certainly, it's costly, but we could have some council members and maybe city staff and some airport stakeholders go out to Los Angeles as well. I have to keep going back to the FAA is one dimension of the problem. You can't legislate your way around, or we can't bargain our way around the state constitutional constraints. What Mr. Minch quoted me saying 8 years ago about courts will defer if there is value in avoiding litigation. There's two important points to be made about that. I think I even said 8 years ago that it has to be credible litigation, and there has to be a fair, again, we have to assess the value to the public of avoiding the litigation. Part of that is based on a good faith assessment of the strength of the claim. Also, that ability is not limitless. You can't use that, and you can't use that notion to do just anything. The reason people are so passionate about this issue is there is an extraordinary amount of money at stake here. And that's...
It's not the city money?
Excuse me. If
So-
y'all would not just speak out of turn, I'd appreciate it myself.
And we have Mr. Altizer, please go ahead. You can't, you're not able to speak from there because we aren't able to record it in the minutes. You need to come up here. And you also need to fill out a form.
Submitting a yellow paper, but I didn't realize that was necessary. This is going to be very short and very sweet and very simple. As one of the members of the LLC down here at the airport, I have two options. Actually, more than that, but two basic options. If the council does not vote to direct the attorney to do as he was directed to do initially, and make our lease comparable to Mr. Green's lease with a 15-year option to continue to be exercised, but let's continue the lease, then negotiate the price of the race. Now, admittedly, we were the first hangar group privately owned on the airport. We got a really great cost per quarter. And that was an incentive, very simply. I know the person that started this hangar. I've talked to him about it. I'm the past president of the association, if you recall. And it was an incentive to get somebody to build a private hangar on the airport. Now, things have changed. Because right now the city has made it known, we're going to take that hangar, those hangars, in 25 years, period. That's come from Morgan, and of course I've heard I'm not stupid, I understand what's going on. Now, as an owner, I have an option. Under the existing lease, I can chop that thing down and remove it up till 11/59, the last day of the lease. That's one thing I can do. The other thing I can do is let the city have it and lose my undivided share of the LLC and rent it back. I will be giving up, let's say my individual hangar is worth 50 grand, approximately. I will be giving up 50 grand that Mr. Green won't have to give up because of the way his lease is worded. So, I do have another option. I can sue the city. Now, it would cost me a fair amount of money to sue the city. It's going to cost the citizens of Cottonwood a fair amount of money to defend this lawsuit. So, okay, hey, if I win, guess what? I win. I got 15 more years, and after that, the city, I have no complaint whatsoever about my hangar reverting to the city. None whatsoever. So now, who is the beneficiary of this lawsuit? The attorneys. The citizens of Cottonwood that are going to be paying for
defending the suit sure as hell aren't beneficiaries. Now, if the city wins the suit, yeah, they're beneficiaries. If they lose the suit, they're out a fair amount of money for defending the lawsuit. Now, you've got 6 different groups, 2 of which, Green and the one that I guess that bought it from him or whatever. And, you know, the equity, the fairness of treatment of the groups is exactly what Mr. Minch is talking about. I don't think anybody on this council, I don't think the attorney recognizes how important fairness and equal treatment means to the FAA. So what I suggest the city do is let's get reasonable about this thing, direct the attorney to do the right thing, and he can use, if he needs it, the threat, no, this is not a threat. This is a possible threat. But I'll tell you something, we aren't going to give up $1 million worth of hangars without one hell of a fight. That's my opinion. This is not a threat, but it is, I guess, my definition of what our options are. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. And I did write your name down on this sheet. This has 2 speakers so that he won't have to fill one out. Okay, Mr. Pratt?
Yeah, again, I may be simplifying things, but it seems to me that we could, again, ease a lot of the issue here if Mr. Minch did indeed have the same language in his lease as Mr. Green's. They're slightly different, but if he had the same language, we'd be in, it seems to me we would have problem solved and people would be happy and we could go from there and work on managing the airport better. And this little roadblock would be out of our way.
Madam Mayor, Mr. Pratt, that would work as long as we understand that that is semantical and that the reading of the green lease, and if you read the minutes from 2008, the reading of the green lease at the time, which informed the council when it made its decision in 2008, was that Mr. Green, when his initial lease term is up, will be subject to the same obligation, and the city would, the parties would renegotiate, and Mr. Green's lease contains the same language about at the end of the initial term, the improvements belonging to the city. And that is the reading that informed the council when it directed in 2008 that these amendments be offered to the other hangar owners. So if the record was clear that that was the intent and that is the intent, the problem to that solution is when legislative bodies make changes, they are presumed to mean to do something different. So you would need to make it clear what your intention is. If your intention is to have that change be an extension of the ground lease and a writing out of the initial agreement between the parties between 2000, 2005 when these leases were entered into, a writing out of the right to the city to the improvements, that becomes a problem with the gift clause.
Okay. One thing that I would like to say with Mr. Altizer, and I totally agree with him, is that he totally understands that the city is not Diane Jones, the mayor, or Doug Bartosh, the city manager, or Karen, the vice mayor. Okay, I'm just saying that I appreciate the fact that you realize that the city is not Diane Jones, Karen Pfeiffer, or Doug Bartosh. It is the citizens of Cottonwood.
That's exactly
every
what I was
man,
about to
woman,
say.
and child. And that's what I said. I appreciate that you understand that concept. Thank you.
Well, hey, ma'am,
Yeah.
I'm not an idiot, and I didn't fall off a turtle truck.
Right. But I liked it that you mentioned it, so
Thank you
I'm
very much. I
complimenting you.
appreciate that compliment.
Thank you.
The other thing is, this is not a new lease. This is a continuation of the old lease with renegotiated rental rates, which we expect. 25 years is a long time. But we expect some equality with the rest of the airports, which the FAA demands, with the rest of the land leases. We don't expect the rent to go from what it is to $1,000 a month. We expect a negotiated land lease rate. But as I said, I made my spiel.
Thank you.
And thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Jan Thompson?
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. I'm in a different situation than these fellows. My husband passed away, and I've been trying for several years to sell the property that I own that's sitting on a piece of leased land. And I've had many buyers come through. I've asked and continually asked for the 15 years that was given in 2008, that everyone was under the impression was just like Mr. Green's. And Mr. Green's is included. It states 25 years and 15 years for a total of 40 years. Mr. Garcia says that normal for most leases is 40 years, because people like myself, Mr. Minch, Mr. Green, and the others that have built the larger hangars and those that have invested in the smaller hangars, they can't recoup their investment in that amount of time. I was asked to get an appraisal, which I did at my expense. Morgan did get it paid for me. But that gave them, or Mr. Horton, the numbers that the value of my hangar with the existing lease in October of last year was $220,000. And if I had that 15 years extra, I could perhaps sell it for $305,000, because that was the value based on the appraisal done by an aviation hangar appraisal company provided by the company, by the city. Well, that was the difference of $85,000 that Mr. Horton said he'd be glad to give me that hard 15 years if I would give the city the $85,000. So I'm in a rock and a hard place now. I need to sell this property. I have no business on the airport. I have no airplanes anymore. I have no interest in it, and I want out. So urgency tonight would really help me, because if all of y'all are leaving rather soon, as it sounds, I can't afford to wait until the next group of people that come in. I need to sell my hangar now. And I'm listening to the thought, and I look up at the heart of Arizona wine country. You know, Cottonwood is on the cusp of really, you are going to get more people like us who are willing to come in and make an investment for you if you give them a decent lease of 40 years. So quite simply, all we're asking for is what you already said in 2008, that we at 40 years. And then, yes, you can have my hangar, you can have his hangar, you can have them all. To back up on some of the information that Mr. Scott had, I have a friend that just negotiated with Falcon Field for 40 years, and he's got a 5,000 square foot hangar, which is smaller than mine, but it's about the same size as Mr. Minch, and he pays less for hangar rent or for lease than we do. So, and these are major airports compared to Cottonwood. Well, I'm not grumbling about the price, but I'm grumbling about the 40 years. I'd really like to be able to sell it. I can't sell it, and I just can't keep it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pratt?
Yeah, again, maybe I'm being really simple, but don't understand it all. But my inclination would be to, yes, grant those other 15 years. Because in part, it would hurt, or it would dissuade other people from investing if they weren't assured they had that 40 years. And in the end, it's going to be good for the city, as well as being good for the hangar owners, and it seems to me it would be good for the city. So again, maybe I'm not grasping the complexity of it, but I would like to see the 15 years added on so that they do have that 40-year lease.
We've got more people waiting to speak. If we can have this discussion that you want till they're done, I think it would go a long ways in clearing the air.
So I'll take care of that. I'm
Please
the chairman.
do. Please do. You
okay,
are.
so
You are.
Amanda, next. Sorry, we're not moving fast enough for you, but I would like to hear everyone, and
Well,
we have gone well over the 5 minutes for each person because
And
it's
that's all I'm
important for
asking
us
is that we
to.
move on with the public who wants to speak.
She's there.
Madam Mayor, council members, my name is Amanda Shankland. I am the CEO and the general manager of Sedona. Thought you might like to see what a face looks like for our new and improved airport. So, you know, you guys are in a tough place, and I personally, my background in aviation is both sides. I mean, I can understand your challenges. I can understand what they're looking at, and I can understand why you might say, we need something different. So I wanted to just kind of stand up here and say, is there anything that you want to ask from somebody that doesn't really have a dog in this fight? You might have some questions there that you can always reach out, of course, to us. There's just two things that I wanted to talk about. You have a lot of emotion. When it comes to pilots, they're just passionate people. I'm one of them. I can't help it. But it looks like you guys also have the heart to take care of the people here. And the liaison in between seems to be the breakdown. I mean, that's probably the only thing I can say. And that's, you need somebody that is going to stand up, that's going to speak from both sides, that understand both sides, but really have aviation at heart. And of course, like you guys have talked about, the citizens of Cottonwood and your, all of your owners, your tenants, your stakeholders. I think it's a beautiful idea to bring together a group. I know it needs to probably be something quick because FAA doesn't wait for anybody, and that's just their rule. And so the other thing that I thought maybe I'd just throw out is this big, beautiful place of aviation. There are consultants that do this all the time. You may feel like you're the only person that's ever been in this position, but they're everywhere. So you might want to dive into that too, especially inviting somebody to this meeting. Could be myself, could be one of my consultants, but they do this all the time, and it might be able to help. I just wanted to throw that up for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So one of Mr. Pratt's ideas, I guess it was Mr. Pratt, it could be someone else, was to create a committee with all the stakeholders to further discuss a plan, although no other airport has a plan, but we could be the first. But I think that that is something that it would be difficult to make a decision about leases when our legal advice local and our legal advice, Mr. Sims, is saying that there would be issues. So maybe through a committee, we could discuss those issues and come to some resolution. I don't know how the rest of you feel about that.
What I was discussing was
Was it you that
put together
suggested the work group?
Yeah, a workshop that would create a policy that
I guess
was very.
it was you, not Mr. Pratt.
It's okay.
Sorry.
It doesn't matter who. It just so long as something positive, gets done. But is to create a committee, if you want, of all the stakeholders that would create a policy that's very forward-thinking, transparent, and like Mr. Garrison said, what did you say? Transparent, simple, and equitable. But again, getting all the stakeholders involved, again, like Amanda, I forget what your last name was, I apologize. Shankland suggested there are folks that do this for a living who could certainly help Cottonwood out. I don't think there's anything wrong with us reaching out. I know it's going to cost money, but you have to consider it's money invested in our airport. If we can get this policy clear and concise, and it's certainly not going to make everybody happy, but it's going to bring everybody to the table and get some resolution to this, I think that's where we need to go.
And Madam, I'm sorry.
Yes, Mr. Pratt, or Mr. Pratt, Mr. Horton.
I'll channel Mr. Pratt. What I would suggest is, because my perception is that I've become a bit of the issue, and I don't want to be that, because I think that's an obstruction. So what I I wouldn't say that I wouldn't participate, but I would ask Bill to take a lead role. He understands the gift clause jurisprudence. I think Amanda's attorney is our FAA attorney as well. Again, I think you can't, the FAA grant assurances and some of that analysis can be a bit of a red herring if it's being spoken about to the exclusion of the gift clause. But it's part of the equation, it's part of the discussion, and this is going to cost some money. But I would want to take second or third chair in any subsequent discussions about this, because again, I think I've become a bit of more of the issue than I want to and should be.
And so, I mean, we're talking about allocating funds, and we have a tight budget.
Yes, ma'am.
Vice Mayor?
Is it possible to do the second thing that Terrence came up with, to make the verbiage the same in the other contracts, and still, after that's done, work on the other issues? Because like she said, almost half this council is going to be gone after tonight.
Well, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, like I said, I think what it is an exercise in semantics. I think the council would need to be clear about what it means to do if it's directing that the leases be changed. If you're making a semantical change, then why are you doing it? So it's not the grammar and the punctuation, it's the intent that matters.
One comment, Madam Mayor?
Mr. Minch?
In 2008, you mentioned in 2008, Mr. Kirby made a motion that be done. It would have been done if Mr. Horton had worded them the same way. Mr. Horton worded them differently in the addendum or the extension of the lease, whatever you want to call that piece of paper. At the time, I didn't know about exclusive rights that were given to other people. Otherwise, I would have never signed that, because it does say 25 and then 15. That is not what Mr. Kirby, in his motion that passed unanimously, that is not what he said. He said to make them all the same, and that was not done. That should have been done then. I don't know if it was an oversight or what, but it wasn't done in the point. And if you read the minutes from November of 2008, his wording is very clear. Mr. Horton says that the addendum to the lease is clear enough, you wouldn't have to go back to the council minutes to determine the intent. If you read those November of 2008 minutes, you will know what the intent was of council. It's there, plain as day, the same as the GRL lease. Thank you.
Do you have an explanation for that? Because I keep hearing it over and over and over, and I would like to understand that better. Just a minute. Let our attorney speak, please. Would you please
And
have a
Madam
seat?
Mayor,
And then I'll call you up when he's done. Mr. Minch, have a seat, and I'll catch you when he's done. Thank you.
And Madam Mayor, this is becoming, we're litigating. But the answer to your question is 8 years ago, to the extent I remember, I was not in-house at the time. I think there was somebody working with the Airport Commission, working with the city on airport matters, who then went on to be the city attorney of Flagstaff, and who's since recently left the state. I think the intent at the time was to certainly conform the amendments to the council direction, to the legal effect of the green lease, and to make it even clearer than the green lease was. But our reading of the green lease was 8 years ago and remains today. that in 4 years, Mr. Green will have to sit down with the city and renegotiate his lease rate, and that discussion will be informed by the fact that the improvements revert to the city at the end of that initial term.
But we could extend the lease.
Yes, you can. And the gift clause will require that you obtain fair compensation for any extension you grant. I think there's probably two paths to go, and one, there's a sense, I'm getting a sense from the council that certainly further discussions about policy and contract and the FAA's expectations and the law would be appropriate. And that's certainly a prudent path, and this council has done that countless times in cases where there's impasses like this. The other is, and I've in 20 years of practicing law, I've never found myself saying this, but this may be a case where the resolution, the issues are informed by such passion, and there is so much money at stake that maybe it's almost a contradiction in terms, but friendly litigation would be the way to resolve it. And there is a mechanism in the law called the Declaratory Judgments Act. And one party can bring an action under the Declaratory Judgments Act. Parties can go into court jointly and say to the court, here are the documents, here is the varying interpretations, here are the arguments on either side, and we would want first a judge and then possibly an appellate court, because the appellate court would be, we have a three-tiered court system, and trial judges, as good and smart as they are, don't always get the law right, which is why there are appellate courts. But if the parties were to cooperate in that, we could get a definitive answer on what the law requires. So that's another option.
So Mr. Minch, and then Ms. Thompson.
I have the letter where she wrote to the city declaring that Mr. Green's lease is 25 years with a 15-year option, while Mr. Minch's lease ends in 25 years. I have the letter. It sounds like double talk. I don't know. I look at this thing, there's a line in the lease that should have been different. And when you wrote it in 2008, you wrote it a different way. And the different way excluded me from the 15-year option. It gave me an option, but it's at your right to take the building first. And it just sounds like double talk that's going on here. Oh, you're going to get in all this. I'd be more worried about the FAA taking your airport away. They gave you grants. And the grant assurances, Grant Assurance 22, has a penalty. I'd be more worried about losing your airport than changing a line in my lease. Thank you.
I have the date at home, and the paperwork, I don't have it with me because I honestly didn't think we would get to speak this far, all of us. I received a call from Mr. Horton saying, we're going to give you that 15 years, Jan. I'm going to send you a copy of Mr. Minch's lease, or his addendum, sorry, and it's going to read like that. He sent me that. I have that copy. Then a few days later, I get another, which is one for me, that gives me that 15 years with all the little explanations now that they want to change. So it was totally different from Mr. Minch's, totally different from Mr. Green's. So I just feel like there's just some kind of something that just isn't right here in Cottonwood. So, and as far as this gift that you keep talking about, I can't speak for Mr. Green, but I have a feeling that most of us would have it taken down. R&M steel, there is a market for it. I would sell it for $1 and have it moved. So I would be with Mr. Minch, and you'll just have a pad there. and that's the way I feel about it. There, Mr. Garrison said the right thing. There's a simple way to solve this tonight.
Mr. Altizer?
The baloney is going back and forth at an unbelievable rate. But, so I'm going to reiterate. Sir, in case some of you don't know, I also am an attorney. I retired as being an attorney when I went over to the black world at Lockheed because I didn't have time to serve two masters. So, and I do not profess to be up on Arizona law. This is a federal type thing, but it's not, forget all that crap. Like I said, how much is it going to cost this city to defend 3, 4, 5, 6 lawsuits? Because you're not going to get $1 million worth of hangers, sir, without a fight. It's that simple.
So, comments from the council?
Yeah, before we move forward, if I may, I do think we need a clear-cut policy. And that's something that we have to work on, you know. And the only other thing I want to add is that it might be prudent to send the group of people you mentioned to meet with Mr. Garcia. And since there aren't going to be very many of you left, we got the vice mayor and the mayor possibly could attend that meeting and clear the air on that side of the issue. You know, because nothing's going to change tonight. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Mr. Pratt?
Yeah, again, complex issue that I may not understand. I still would like to see that language be the same. And I do think the intent was for the 40 years. And again, the idea was that people weren't going to invest unless they had an extended period. But at the same time, there are still some issues with the airport. We could take care of that language, make both contracts read the same thing. And I agree with Ruben, send a group to see Mr. Garcia, but also work actively to put together a group of city council people, city people, citizens, and stakeholders at the airport to work on the other issues so that we don't head into any of these things again or run head on into any of these things again. But I would just like to see the language be the same, and I've seen the writing, and yeah, maybe it is semantic, but it is a little different. But again, I thought the intent was 40 years, and I can understand why somebody wouldn't want to sign something that wasn't that extended period of time. So again, simply, I'd like to see the language change, but let's form a committee and work on other issues at the airport to make sure we do run smoothly from now on. And I think the physical evidence that Mr. Mitch presented suggests there are issues up there. We may not have the amenities we need up there for such a quality airport. And all of the pilots I've talked to, and I believe I've talked to you, have said this is a really, really very good airport, and it has much more potential than we are getting out of it. So change the language and have a committee.
I think that without proper assurance on legal issues, that I like the idea better of going out and talking to Mr. Garcia and further working on this. And with the goal of, if we can, bring the leases to be the same, that we'll do that. I don't know how we can make a motion when we could be making a legal FAPU. I mean, I couldn't support it. But I do not want the hangers of the people in this room. And whoever's saying that, I don't know where that comes from. But I would like to be sure that the legalities are correct, and that's my stance. Mr. Elinsky?
Could we take a two-prong approach where we, like Mr. Horton said, remove you from the equation? I think that's wise of you to say so. Get a legal opinion from another attorney on the difference in the contracts, which would settle Mr. Minch's concerns.
Which, did you not do that? No, not specific. You just were asking about principles rather than actual leases.
I assume that the council is okay and understands, because we've been working together for a very long time, that attorneys and clients enjoy a privilege that's usually, and only the client can waive it. We've been having this discussion about legal analysis and legal consequences, and we've been litigating this out in public. So I'll keep talking and presume that the council's okay that the privilege is waived, that the city's legal position is a matter of, as far as you're concerned, a matter of public concern and public disclosure. To the extent that, and I think it's relevant how you interpret the green lease as the precedent for these others. My interpretation 8 years ago and today is that at the 25-year period, the rental rate will be informed by the fact that the improvements revert to the city, to the public. There is another factoid in there that's was recently reminded of. I think it predated me, or it happened when I was not in-house and not aware of everything that was going on. But to the extent the leases might be interpreted differently, I believe Mr. Green erected a very expensive hangar, and I don't, we're trying to get into the mind of the former city manager, who's not with us anymore, but he was opposed to making any of the other leases any different. But Mr. Green did install a very expensive hangar that's, I think, very different in type than these others. And I believe he also installed a lot of public infrastructure. So there would be a difference to the extent there's a difference in the meaning of the leases. I don't think there is. So let's say that was the initial lease.
Just Mr. Minch.
I'll sit down.
Thank you, because we gave you every opportunity to speak, and we'll allow you more time to speak. But I think we could respect others until they're finished, as we respected you. Thank you.
So that would have been the lease with Larry Green, and whenever that was executed. Again, I think it's the same legal effect. If the direction and the discussion in the minutes makes it clear, because there was a lot of discussion, and I think the minutes have been selectively quoted for the council. If the council reads all of the minutes from 2008, I was as clear as I could be that what you were directing was that at the end of the initial 25-year term, that the city would sit down in good faith, that we were documenting the fact that the city would sit down in good faith with every lessee before taking the hangars, before doing something else with the hangars, before taking the hangars down and doing something else with the land. That there would be a discussion, but that discussion, and I think the minutes are pretty clear about this, would be informed by the fact we can't rewrite, as a matter of the public interest in this and a matter of the Constitution, you can't unwrite the fact that the initial term was 25 years, and at the end of the 25-year term, the improvements revert to the city. So one of the other things that Bill, and I'm sorry, he shot me a quick email about this because I called him on the way down because he didn't know that today was the deadline, or we were supposed to get his opinion and analysis on this. But the other thing, other than confirming the gift clause analysis, was looking at that initial 2008, and I think I mentioned this at the outset. There's a possibility, to the extent it granted rights any more than just a reciprocal duty to sit down and negotiate at the end of 25 years, there's a possibility that those amendments are void for lack of consideration. You can't have a contract without valuable promises going in both directions. So, very difficult legal issues, and I'm only speaking to this after saying that I'd like to be removed from the equation, because I think the council, you know, to the extent the council would take legal action tonight, I think you need to be fully informed of as much of the analysis as the only attorney you have at your disposal tonight can offer you.
So if the council voted to change leases tonight, and what would happen, I mean, what repercussions would members of the council have for doing that? What are possibilities of doing something rash without a lot of thought, without analysis? What are some possibilities, if any?
Council members individually, you enjoy legislative immunity. So you can you can act in that sense with personal impunity. But the city, to the extent that there is a gifting issue here, the city could be at some legal risk. And again, I don't think at this point it would be wise to certainly to rely on anybody's conclusions about that. There's been enough, you know, fog in the air here tonight that I think other people and other experts and maybe courts should be heard on that. There's certainly an open and important question that I don't think the council's in a position to answer tonight.
Can I just finish my thought?
Sure.
Initially, I was talking about the two-pronged approach. One would be getting an attorney to review the leases to make sure that they both have the same legal effect, which again would satisfy Mr. Minch and others. And then the second approach would be to, we're talking about flying folks out to LA to visit with Mr. Garcia. I might suggest just calling him, you know, having some kind of a telephone conference where he could be privy to the conversation and respond to our questions, you know, and then moving forward on getting this committee together. Because I don't think even if the exact wording is the same as Mr. Minch, I don't think that this is a dead issue. I think we still need to work hard to get our airport leases, you know, clear and concise to the public. Period. I don't want to keep kicking this can further down. You know what I'm saying? So I think even if we tonight said make the wording exactly the same, it doesn't mean we can just ignore this issue until it comes up again. I still think we have to get a clear written policy in place. So.
Okay, so members of the audience, Mr. Minch?
I do have to agree with Mr. Horton on one thing. I'm sorry. I do have to agree with Mr. Horton on one thing. It did come up at that council meeting in 2008 or 2007 about Mr. Green has a 14,000 square foot building, and his other one was 10,000. Thompson's is 6,000, mine's 4,500. And at the time, the issue was raised by, I don't know who in the city, that he has so much more invested, we're going to give him the 15 years. That's in the minutes. We're going to give him the extra 15 years. So what are you going to do, take it away now? Anyhow, you're going to give him the 15 years, and I refuted that because I said my hangar square foot costs as much as his. Just because he's got a bigger hangar and a bigger plane doesn't mean you're going to give him 15 years and not give me 15 years. And if you refer to the minutes, you'll find that's the truth. I didn't bring him tonight because I didn't think this was going to happen, that a line in the lease was going to become, a major issue. But anyhow, council at that time then did agree that even though my hangar is 4,500 and his is 14,000, that the term of the lease should be the same. And now we're backwatering on his. Are you going to take his building away in 25 years? Is that the intention here? And also the other one he had, I think, belongs to you. Are you going to take those buildings in 25 years? That's what I'm hearing. And golly, that just doesn't sound fair, equitable, nice, nothing. It doesn't sound any. And so we're hearing that his lease doesn't give him 40 years, and yours. And so you're going to take his building away, and therefore you should take mine too. All I'm asking for is the same wording as his, because his wording says 25 and 15. Mine says my lease ends in 25.
Okay.
A big difference.
And we've heard that tonight many times, so we
Apparently
understand.
not, though. Thank you.
Yeah. And Mr. Paxia?
Thank you. I talked to Mr. Larry Green, and he says that, in his opinion, he has a 40-year lease, and there's no way that the city would take his building at the end of 25 years. And my old daddy used to say, if you get a bunch of lawyers involved, then the lawyers are the ones that win on the deal. I think you guys, as a city council, need to make a motion and do the business that we have elected you to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Minch?
I would just like to ask, if several of the council people announced tonight that this is their last night, and this issue is not put to bed tonight, or at least somewhat resolved, when would there be a quorum, or don't you need a quorum to resolve something over the summer? How long would this go on before you could talk about it, get the necessary people in that you said you'd like to involve, and then resolve something?
So we will be determining that according to code as soon as the resignations happen the next time we meet. Code says we will discuss a mechanism, but we will still have 4 people, we'll have a quorum.
Oh, you will? Okay.
We'll still have a quorum. We couldn't meet without one.
Okay,
But if someone's absent, we won't be able to meet. So it will be imperative for the council to choose how they will handle that, and that will be the first meeting after the resignations.
Because I really think that Jan is the one who's up against the wall. She can do nothing. Nobody wants to buy her building until this issue is somewhat resolved.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
may I respectfully speak to that, because there's another bit of information that I haven't shared with the council or the public. We received a call, I think Morgan received a call from a gentleman. First of all, I guess they thought it was on tonight's agenda, but on the next agenda, we believe there'll be a lease assignment. There appears to be a market for leases even with 9, 10, 11 years left on them, because there is a pending sale, and a local bank. One of the discussions when Tony Garcia was last out here was about what lender would lend on these, very unusual pieces of commercial paper, is what it is. It seems like there's a local lender and a buy-sell agreement and a pending request for an assignment of a leasehold interest at the airport. And I believe the sale price is $250,000 with about 11 or 12 or 13 years left. I don't know what size the hangar is. Also, the Morgan got a call, and then I spoke to a gentleman in Wisconsin who wants to return. I guess they have family connections in Sedona, and they want to move back here. And he's in negotiations for a lease that I believe has 9 years remaining on it. And just to help me identify what lease it was, I asked him about the purchase price. And I believe it was $160,000, he said. And he wanted to know how the lease extensions worked and how the city was interpreting the lease language, and I explained it to him. It seemed like he understood. It seemed like it resonated with him in terms of there were other issues at his local airport, and a different mechanism for resolving those issues. But he seemed to recognize that this is not an uncommon issue for communities to have. So anyway, there appears to be something of a market for these leases.
At a rather reduced price, sir.
And that may be.
That's the gotcha.
That may be.
Because I know what we paid for the hangar back whenever, and if the city intends to up everything at the time the lease expires, that price you quoted isn't really a savvy. They're getting a deal, let me put it that way. The seller is getting the shaft. Thank you.
Okay, one more time, and then we're going to wrap up our public discussion.
I'm aware of the man that called you, and I am that desperate that I dropped the price, $60,000, to try to get rid of it because I am sick of this. He's not here yet. I have no money yet, and I haven't sold it yet.
So, council, what I heard was that because of legal issues, and we're just not sure yet of what they are, I mean, and we could be breaking the law ourselves, that you wanted to speak with Mr. Garcia. So Tim suggests saving money by a phone conversation. Would that work as well?
Never.
Okay.
But I appreciate Tim's concern about a contingent. We were talking about doing it when, and I think Amanda made the point that the FAA doesn't wait. Well, we submitted a corrective action plan to an audit report that we got in May of 2014. In November of 2014, we submitted our corrective action plan. We've yet to hear a response for that. But it's an important conversation to have. It would be better if the one person or maybe the two people from Los Angeles, if we could prevail on them, or there's a Scottsdale office, and maybe the next time they're in Scottsdale, we can schedule a meeting with those folks there. That's an important piece of the discussion. I think the policy piece is really the council's lane. The legal piece, I welcome the opportunity, and I don't think I've ever welcomed it this much before, to step out of the equation. But I think that's a good approach. I think that's a prudent approach. I think it would be rash for the council to do something tonight. I don't think that means that, this has to be belabored, too much longer.
Mr. Pratt?
Yeah, I think we should go forward with that and set up that meeting that Tim and I and Randy and everybody had talked about and work towards some clarity and equity. I feel like even if I did make a motion tonight, maybe it would be rash, but it probably wouldn't pass anyhow, so I won't make a motion. But let's move forward on this as quickly as possible and set up that meeting and do the Scottsdale thing and then have the community meeting with the city and stakeholders and citizens and an outside legal opinion.
One more. Yes, sir?
I'm Bill Wade with the Airport Commission, and we've beat this to death. And we basically concur with the speakers tonight. I don't think meeting with the feds are going to solve this. What you really need to do, and this is a tail wagging the dog, the attorney is wagging the whole process. You get everybody that has the intent to change this, and I mean just about everybody. I haven't heard anybody that says, yeah, let's take over these hangars. I talked to the airport manager, and he said, well, we don't own the hangars. And nobody wants to own these hangars. And you can't talk to Scottsdale or Phoenix because they have a completely different market for, of renting hangars. You had a 5,000 square foot hangar at Scottsdale Airport, you could probably rent it. But you had one here in Cottonwood, you're not gonna be able to rent it. And so you're gonna end up with a bunch of hangars, or you're gonna end up with a bunch of empty pads. What you really need to do is employ an attorney to make it right. You folks have made mistakes in contracts before. And so, everybody in the world says this is a bad deal, and you're still trying to make it justify it some way. The attorney is. I think you need to hire a legal counsel and make a change. And tell the legal counsel, look, we screwed up on this contract. We need to make them all consistent. We need to make them 40 years, give options, and then have an ending point. At 40 years, you're going to own that hangar regardless, and make it right. Because you're not going to do it talking to the feds. Feds are not going to do it. It's a legal issue to satisfy you.
And we've done exactly what your recommendation is. We're going to remove our counsel for this point and get Mr. Sims in to manage and help us through this legal quagmire that we have.
But
So, thank you.
You people represent the people,
Yes, we do.
and you need to make the contract reflect the will of the people. And that's what the attorney needs to be told. Said, I don't know what it takes to do. Get the parties together and mutually terminate all the agreements and develop a new agreement. I mean, there has to be a way to move this from point A to B rather than just beat it to death all the time. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a bunch of hangars or a bunch of empty spaces.
And that's the possibility, I think, of the process that the council has discussed and wants to set up. And with that process, we will actually have the public, as we've talked about tonight, the public also has an interest in this. And they will have an opportunity to share. If they all agree, that's great. We'll figure out the legal mechanism to wade through this and try to help everybody out. I don't think there's any council member here that doesn't care about what you're saying. And I know it's easy to say, oh, just throw the legal opinions out, but you're setting yourself up for worse lawsuits than we've been threatened with tonight. So
That's true, but
$4 million, we had a $4 million lawsuit for a paraglider hitting a balloon. I mean, the citizens of Cottonwood put a lot of money into that problem.
that's true. And I think that the inurement issue is definitely an issue, but I think it can be resolved legally. The other side of that coin, though, that nobody really wants to talk about too much, is that you're not doing the citizens of Cottonwood very well if you've garnered yourselves a bunch of hangars that you can't rent. And if you could continue with an owner there, at least you're going to be making some revenue off of it. So there's another side of that coin also in hurting the taxpayers from that perspective.
Thank you. And I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for the rest of the council, but I want you to have your hangars. It's never my intent as a citizen of Cottonwood.
By the way, I do not own a hangar out there.
Thank you. So you're the citizen representative then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mayor?
Yes.
I haven't said very much. So usually wait till the end to kind of sum these things up, but yeah, this is overall just kind of a large frustrating situation. Like, had we maybe pursued this to this depth back in 2008, when you read through these, I kind of get the impression that council back then was saying, hey, you guys might want to look at this a little bit closer. So if I'm reading that wrong, please tell me. But I kind of got that impression. So trying to hurry up and fix it right now is just really going to end up, that's kind of what they tried to do at the end of the meeting in 2008. And so it's the good money after bad. I mean, I understand everybody wants to get it fixed, and we want nothing more than that. We want you guys to we don't want your hangars. I have no desire for a hangar. I don't think nobody that I've spoken to, we're all on the same page. But we don't want to make a foolish decision going forward, and then in 10 years we're back here again with you guys getting angry at us because we made a hurry-up decision. So I think that we definitely need to clarify that and take the time, invest the time in this decision right now, even if it's frustrating, so that you don't have one later. It's the time that we should have invested probably in 2008. And I have to say, I'm going to be the jerk in the room, but everybody that has hangars there signed contracts. The contract, when you signed it, said 25 years. And then the other things happened. I don't want to argue things that did, what other people got or didn't get, but that was the contract. When I go to buy a car, I don't go back in a year and say, hey, I want the same deal he got. I signed a contract with a 5-year note. I signed the contract. It's a and when you first signed it, the 15-year extension didn't even exist. So to come back now and say, well, I want what everybody else got, I understand that, and I think we all want to achieve that, but we want to make sure that we don't achieve it in a way that puts you guys in jeopardy or that puts the citizens in jeopardy. Myself, like Mr. Horton said, we legislative immunity or whatever, but I don't think anybody's out to get your hangers. We want to do this in the right way, and trying to rush through a decision is the same thing we did in 2008. A question I have for Morgan, how much more room do we have out there for hangars?
Of this type of hangar?
Sure, on-site, how many more square feet could we build hangars on?
Right now, probably only one.
Okay.
And that's debatable. There could be a substantial amount of dirt work in the future to create more, but that's a major capital project. So right now, sitting available today.
Somebody wants to get a hangar, they're probably not going to come in and try and build a new one. They would look at an old one. And it's not like there's a raging market for bare land up on the airport right now. People aren't fighting to get in and get bare land. So I'm kind of, that the hangars in that respect are actually probably going to start, in some cases, even to appreciate because they're already there and the infrastructure's done and they're more convenient than building a new hangar. The other question I've got is how did we set these? A lot of this, I think, rolls back to the rates that got set. When people originally bought these, how did we determine the rate? I think I spoke to a pilot and he said back then it was like a bid process. So somebody would maybe put in a bid on the property, and whoever what was the original setting of the price? Do we know what that was? Am I correct? I mean, I'm just trying to get an idea.
I don't know the original setting of the price. I do know the FAA gave us pretty specific guidelines on how to do it in the future.
Right. Okay. Because I'm just trying to get it, because when I look at the list, I see one hangar here that's markedly, I think it's the Dakota Tours, that doesn't really have the escalator on it, and it's markedly cheaper than a lot of the rest of them there, other than the association. So I'm trying to, what is the difference on the Dakota Tours and the escalators on it?
May I address that?
I'm just trying to clarify what the two are.
Yeah, I was only going to editorialize and say that we're trying to extricate ourselves. That's one of the things we're in the soup with the FAA over, is the fact that some of our leases don't have escalators. And whoever spoke earlier and said one of the biggest bits of heartburn we've given the FAA was some of the outside the fence long-term leases that extend out. Those were very bad deals for the city. Those were poorly advised. They were not only poorly advised, but they were they violated the FAA's expectations of us, and they've made that clear. We had to push back. Again, I'm doing things that lawyers don't do with clients in public typically. But the FAA said, you need to change those leases now. And we said, we'd rather have your enforcement, and some of this was a calculation, but we would rather see what the FAA did by way of enforcement than break existing leases. Because I think, like Jesse said, and I think everybody recognizes, these leases are binding legal documents, and they create rights and obligations on both sides. And we were not going to tell leaseholders that had that right, sweetheart deal though it was, that the deal was going to change, because for that we would get sued and we would lose. And actually, I think Mr. Garcia was reasonable and understood that that was a bridge too far for us.
So we actually defended,
We told him we could not, I told him we could
break
not do that.
leases.
And I explained that he was putting us in an untenable position, and he appeared to have accepted that. Also, the fact that it's been a year and a half since we submitted our corrective action plan, and we responded to different things along the way as we were putting that together, suggests part of the problem, part of the reason we got kind of a punitive audit was for nobody's deliberate fault. There was a delay in responding, or what Mr. Garcia perceived as a delay in responding to certain questions about the audit and certain requests for information, and some of the fact that the audit result was what it was the fact that I think he felt a little underloved. So we've tried to clarify that and correct that as well.
Mr. Elinsky.
I'm optimistic that we're not far away from a solution that's going to make everybody happy. We only have really 6 people up there to make happy, and if we can't get all those folks at the table and at least moderately satisfy 6 people, then we're really failing, like really failing. So I would like to make a motion so that at least the public is confident that we're moving forward in some positive direction. So I'll just ask the rest of the council what they think, but I would like to move that we form a committee which will work on the land and hangar lease policy, and that we compose the committee of an airport consultant, an attorney, an airport commissioner, a council member, citizen, an airport manager, representative from the FAA, and a hangar owner, and anything else the council deems appropriate.
I would ask that we add to the list of citizens, because one citizen would be outnumbered representing the interest of the citizens of Cottonwood.
And would if those would be public meetings, citizens would probably be free to attend as well, right?
Yes.
Okay.
These will be open meeting law meetings.
If it's a committee, I guess it wouldn't be if we formed it.
It wouldn't be?
I don't know. Well,
Right. I don't envision what you're doing is forming
An official
formal
committee.
subcommittee or committee of the council. I think you're creating a working group to try and work through this problem.
Like the bicycle committee somewhat.
Right.
They don't officially
And like I said,
report to us.
I think it would be important that whoever you didn't name, but the people who've been involved in this, would participate. But I think, we should, I specifically would be second or third chair. And we would let, consultants and other experts and other people who've been through this and other communities have been through this, take a fresh look at it.
Okay. And let's advertise this, in the paper and seek applicants and hopefully get a working group together so that we can at least give the public some confidence that this isn't a dead issue to the council, that even though this council is about to change over, it's still a priority. And of course, there will always be a council here, and there always will be a quorum to work on this issue moving forward. So,
Mr. Pratt?
I would second that. I think it's importantly, not that just that the council cares, that the city cares. So I second that motion.
Any discussion? Okay, so Mr. Elinsky made the motion, Mr. Pratt seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all for being here tonight. We really appreciate you and your input. Okay, so the next item is review of plans and architectural rendering for the park restroom projects. We'll let everybody exit and then.
Yeah.
You ready to talk about restrooms?
Yes.
The way I understood it,
Thanks.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you.
We're analyzing that plan. I was talking with Jeff today.
Sorry we didn't get a result, but I think we're on the path to getting it done for you, so hopefully it works out.
Good luck to you.
You have a bullhorn or something?
Well, I'll let them mill and.
Bring it in.
Okay, item number, I crossed it out too. Review of, can't read it. Review of plans and architectural rendering for the park restroom projects. Long time waiting for this item. Couple years.
I hope this is a less controversial.
You didn't have to recuse yourself?
We're not making any decisions. It's just-
Madam Mayor,
Yeah.
members of the council,
Waiting it.
you'll remember that we have $750,000 budgeted this year to install new restroom facilities at 3 city parks. The 3 city parks, and by the way, this is a rendering of one. If you don't mind, I'm gonna turn off the lights. So you can see them.
Okay.
Just get the clap.
Yeah, we need a clapper.
This is an architectural rendering of the buildings, and there will be 2 brand new buildings and 1 remodel. We'll get into that in just a minute. The 3 parks are obviously Garrison Park, which will be a brand new facility, Kids Park located near the fairgrounds, also a brand new facility, and then the Riverfront Softball Complex, which will just be a remodel of the existing facility. First, we'll get into Garrison Park. We were originally considering remodeling the existing building. Actually, what we'd like to do is we'd like to put a brand new facility in this structure for a couple of reasons. When we started looking at the cost to remodel, the cost to run sewer to where it's going to need to be run from the existing location, if you don't know, the existing Garrison Park facility is on a septic tank. It's still on a septic tank today. So we were going to have to do a grinder pump and several other things. We started looking at everything else. We said, why don't we build a brand new facility and either demo and or just remodel the existing facility to make it look and match the rest of the park. So this area here, the Ramadas are over here. This is the existing restroom facility. This is the county complex in the background. The teen center is right over here. So it would probably go right here in this area between these 2 trees. A couple features about, obviously it is a new building, brand new construction. It's located much closer to the Ramadas than where it was before. For those of you who've been to Garrison Park, it's obviously across the park to get to the bathroom facilities. We will go with industrial grade / institutional grade fixtures. What this means, many of you have been inside our public parks, and unfortunately they're frequently vandalized. We'll not only do a lot of graffiti-proof paint, but something that will be very, very difficult to damage and operate much more often for the public. I think you've all been to our parks when unfortunately they've had to be closed. And so this is going to be a little bit more expensive, but the industrial grade fixtures are really going to help make sure that the majority of the public gets to use them and benefit from them. We did actually partner with our police department, and Doug chimed in on this a lot, and we looked at how do we make this facility more secure. Well, not only more secure, but more open, more friendly, less likely to be vandalized in the first place. The police department had a lot of very neat ideas, one of which was, can you lock the bathroom door open? And at first we thought, why would you want to do that? It's a bathroom. Well, no, you obviously still have privacy in the stalls, but the door itself is locked open during the day, and you're preventing abductions, you're preventing anything from drug deals or anything else that can be going. So it's not only going to be locked closed at night, it has the ability to be locked open during the day. For those of you who haven't been to some of the open air parks in Phoenix, there's actually a lot more open air up high. So you can hear what's going on. There's just a lot less likelihood of something going on that we don't want going on in our park facilities. The exterior, it'll be made to look much like the surrounding facility. So it won't be, obviously we have a slump block structure there today at Garrison Park. Same number of fixtures as existing, so we're not going to actually add any additional fixtures. It'll be the same number as at the current park. One of the biggest differences from my staff's perspective is this maintenance access. What that does is all plumbing is exposed from that closet. So from a maintenance point of view, we're going to be able to get something up and running, ready to go quickly as possible. And then finally, the other addition that we have problems keeping drinking fountains running. So both of the new buildings will have drinking fountains. Unfortunately, we just had a problem keeping them working in the past, again, due to vandalism. So, any questions on the Garrison
What about
Park?
cameras and by the fountains?
We looked at the possibility of cameras and security systems. It got very expensive very quickly. Something we will do is motion detector lights. That's a relatively inexpensive way to at least deter people from being there. Another difference that you might see, you may remember at the current facility, this, I'll call it a privacy wall here, is actually at an L shape. So you get a lot of problems, people hiding, other unwanted activities in those areas. This gives a much more open air feel.
Yeah. And you're saying the top there is open air?
Yes, so the ceiling, or the walls, don't go all the way to the ceiling.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping to see there, and I'm not quite.
It is difficult to see, but basically there's some open air space so you can hear what's going on. There's also a lot more. One of the problems we were concerned about was that may work well in Phoenix. Up here we have a freezing issue. So we will have to do a little bit of heat tape or something just to keep things from freezing. A few days a year we have that concern.
Sure looks nice.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like the bulk of your, the way you've created that is you created a utility alley, basically, that backs up to all the fixtures.
Yes.
And so you could just keep that room warm.
Yep.
With even some light bulbs would take care of that.
Yeah, light bulbs, heat tape, and that room will probably be heated, and that's probably how we'll do that.
And Madam Mayor, council members, I don't know if Morgan covered this, but that round piece would actually be the city's logo there.
Thank you for reminding me.
Long time coming.
Want me to jump to Kids Park?
Yeah.
Thank you.
This is the Kids Park located right near the fairgrounds. Here's 12th Street. Here's the entrance to the fairgrounds. Fairgrounds is over here. There's residential neighborhood over here. This is the existing ramadas. You've probably all been out there. There's a fenced yard right here. It's kind of an eyesore. That's actually, there's a well there that irrigates the park, and we use it for a few other reasons. We'll actually use the restroom to enclose that well. And it may be slatted fences, but it'll hide it. It'll all blend in much better. So in addition to serving this ramada area in the entire park, it'll hide that all at the same time. This is another, I just took this straight out of the plans so you can see what's, so again, here's the fence going out to the parking lot. Here's the existing ramadas. We will do a sidewalk all the way from the existing ramadas over to the restrooms. And then you can see that enclosed yard right here, which will be improved, and another sidewalk going out. The replacement parts, I'm not sure if you've been inside of our storage facility, but we have to have different light bulbs and different hand fixtures and different, so now we're actually going to have similar features in similar parts of the city. It'll be a lot less expensive for staff, as well as a benefit to the public as far as our ability to replace things quickly. So you'll see a very similar layout. The one difference to the Kids Park versus Garrison Park is we did do an additional fixture at each restroom. So there's one more fixture, because many of you know Kids Park gets used heavily between soccer and events and 4th of July and everything else. We may occasionally still need to have porta-johns out there for very large events, but this will help out quite a bit with that. Also a drinking fountain. We'll hide that existing fenced yard. Other than that, it's about the same.
Sounds good.
And the elevation of that, the elevation of that is similar to the one at Garrison Park then?
Yes,
Okay.
in fact, identical elevation. The building is a tad longer just for that existing fixture.
Okay.
I apologize, I actually meant to have a layout here for the riverfront restrooms. Riverfront restrooms, I apologize, I don't have that layout. The exterior is going to remain the same, but all the interior will look the same, and we'll have industrial grade fixtures. All the wall will be beefed up. Many of you have been in there before, where unfortunately there's holes in the walls and people get angry and make problems to our facility. So all that will be protected, so it'll be much less likely to happen. Unfortunately, we tried the open air effect just because it's already structurally there. We weren't able to do that, but the interior will be completely remodeled in that facility.
So you won't be able to do the open air because
The wall's already there.
Okay.
Structurally, it's
you
already
can't do it structurally?
existing. Yep.
Well, that's nice to know we're moving on that. And these will be able to be locked at night when people aren't using the parks?
That's correct.
Yeah.
We did look at automatic locks. Unfortunately, again, it's not only not expensive, they're actually not as practical as you might think. Unfortunately, all you got to do is slip a garbage can or anything in the way, and now you have access at night.
Right. Thank you.
It's only been, what, 8 years you've been asking for that bathroom at Kids Park?
I don't think it's just me. I think we've all been working on it.
If the council likes the direction we're going, we actually have plans. We're working on a contract, and this could be out to bid within the next few weeks.
Cool.
So I'm getting down here to,
I think it's much needed. I mean, I'm really happy to see we're going to remodel the one at the ball fields as well. It's just really gives us a.
so it sounds like we're excited about it generally.
Go ahead with it.
So direction is, let's do it. It's been budgeted a couple of years, right?
We may have rolled it over once.
It seems like we might have.
It's been a long time,
Yeah, I think
especially
it's,
the kids' park.
it's been on the books for a couple, 2 or maybe even 3 years, I think.
4 or 5.
Long time.
Yeah.
Long time.
Bailey, Nikki was 4 years old and she's now 9 when people were complaining about the kids' park bathrooms at the Christmas parade.
I know my husband every year at the parade begs that they'll get some porta potties
Mm.
there. They as we. Oh, speaking of which, I don't know how it happened, but there is one down at the community garden. I don't know if you know about that, but thank you.
The one that got it there.
Thank you very much, all of you that did that. That's been a request
me.
for a couple of years.
Good idea.
Yeah. Okay, so move forward.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next yes, Mr. Pratt?
I was going to move to pay the claims.
Okay, please. And I'll second that. So Mr. Pratt made the motion, the mayor seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I move to adjourn.
Second.
So the mayor made the motion, Mr. Garrison seconded it as his final act,
Final.
and the curtain falls.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. So all in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.